So when it comes to demons and it comes to these kinds of, let's even take the concept of angels, demons, all the other things, more of the supernatural sort. It is Judaism and Christianity have a fundamental completely different concept of what it is a demon, because in Christianity you have the demons spawning either from Lucifer or Satan and being his minions and doing his bidding in opposition to God. In Judaism, there is no such thing as Lucifer ever being in opposition to God, because he has no free will. He can never rebel against God. God is the ultimate only power that no demon or angel can ever go against him. Only human beings can go against God. Of course, they always lose because they're not as powerful as God, but only human beings have free will to decide if they want to do something for God or blaspheme in his name. Angels can't do that. Now, Christianity, Lucifer is the fallen angel. He rebels against God, and then in the end times, he will wage a war against Jesus, against Jesus and against the humans. But in Judaism, there will be no such thing. There will be no such thing as a war of Satan against God. There will be what is called Behemoth Gog and Magog, Gog and Magog, which will be more or less the end war. But it won't be headed by Satan or anything like that, because Satan can't rebel against God. Now, what is the theology of this? Why even talk about this if there's not theology in this discussion? Because, I'm here to talk about theology, not just the differences. So here's the theology behind this. That if Satan, or the Satan, which means the opponent, is able to rebel against God, does that mean that there is a duality here, and therefore God isn't all that powerful? Because here's the reasoning behind that. If Satan can rebel against God, and in the end times it would try to, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not only that he rebelled at the start, even before Adam was created. It's that he wants to destroy all of God's creations in the end times. If he has that kind of a power, then that would mean that God is not all that powerful, because then, where am I going with it? I think I lost my train of thought. The difference between Judaism and Christianity. Christianity gives more leniency towards angels having free will, being able to rebel against God. In the end times, there would be this great war. And in Judaism, there is no such thing. Angels do not have free will. They cannot rebel against God. Satan is not an evil angel, according to Judaism. What he is the opponent. He's the angel that is supposed to make the choices difficult. Why is that? Because when God commands you, you're supposed to behave this, that, or this certain way, right? And which human being in their right mind is going to say, no, I'm actually going to do the evil thing? Nobody's going to do that, because God tells you have to do this. So God creates, okay, so you humans are just going to follow what I'm saying. So to help you make it difficult, in order to make it a rope pulling contest between good and evil, I'm going to give you something that's going to try to bring you to evil. And that is Satan. So Satan in and of itself is not evil, but he is an instrument by which God tries to make it harder for you to decide between good and evil. Otherwise, you would just follow whatever God says. No human in their right mind would go against God unless there is Satan. But in Christianity, Satan takes a different role. He is an actual incarnate of evil. He's the duality to good and evil. So once we establish this, now we can go into the differences between the demons in Judaism and demons in Christianity. Because in Christianity, you have the demons being servants of Satan. In Judaism, demons have their own king. His name is Asmodeus. And they do what they are destructive, but not evil. In Judaism, demons are not evil per se, but they are inherently destructive. In Christianity, they are inherently evil. Now, what purpose does the distinction serve? The purpose of that is to understand that when Jews or Judaism talks about demons, we have a completely different concept. But nonetheless, of course, I understand the vernacular between the two is used more or less the same. So Jews would say that is demonic, such as I myself have used that is demonic. That is in a sense to say that is evil, that is demonic. Sure, no problem with that because that is vernacular. I'm not taking it in a literal sense. But if I'm going to talk literal, demons aren't inherently evil, but they are inherently destructive. They are forces of they are more or less they're spirits that need to inhibit or inhabit a thing or a living being so they can take control of people if they need to as a as a as a way to survive. They can't survive on themselves. They need to feed off. As human beings are more or less physical, demons are more or less spiritual. They're a complete spiritual being, and they don't have anything that connects them to the real world. So they have to in order to gather themselves, they need to possess something. They can possess a tree, they can possess a cloak, whatever. They need to possess something in order to survive and feed off the physical matter. Meanwhile, human beings, they live as flesh and blood, and we also have a soul, which is the spirit. All right. And doing good things, that feeds the spirit. Okay. So let's talk first about, we'll first talk about the Jewish idea of a demon, and then we'll go to Christianity. In Judaism, you have certain stories of demons actually being pretty friendly to human beings, such as, I think there's this one story in the Talmud, where the Roman emperor was trying to push through some bad laws against Jews serving God. I don't remember. I think it had something to do with learning the Torah and so on and so forth. So they sent over one of the rabbis. The rabbi was supposed to ask from the Roman emperor, please stop. We really need this in order to serve God. We can't have you oppressing us. When on the way to Rome, the rabbi found himself near a demon. The demon was doing his own demon things, whatever he was doing, and the demon asked the rabbi, where are you going? The rabbi answered, well, I'm going to Rome because this, that, and the other. The demon answered the rabbi, hey, you know what? You know what'll be crazy? You know what'll be a good idea? If I were to go ahead of you, possess the emperor's daughter, and make her do all crazy things, then you will come by and you will exorcise me out of her, and then you could ask the king whatever you want. You could ask the emperor whatever you want. And the rabbi agreed to this, and that's more or less how the story played out. He possessed the emperor's daughter. Daughter acted all crazy like, and then the rabbi came and exorcised her and got those laws repealed, more or less. So here we have a story of a demon willing to help human beings. That doesn't mean that demons are good. Judaism does not consider demons to be good. They're inherently destructive. They're not good. Certain demons, sometimes they're willing to help out. They are more or less creatures with some kind of intellect. They are more or less destructive. They are dangerous, obviously dangerous, and it is advised to stay away from them. But sometimes there are certain demons there, they're willing to do good things. Why? For whatever reason, I think the demon was thinking, hey, this could be fun, and I have a good license to do whatever I want because, I'm doing it under the supervision of a rabbi, so I guess it's fine, it's okay, nobody's really gonna stop me. I guess that was his thinking, but not more or less that's what went down there. Okay. In Christianity, demons are inherently evil. They do the bidding of Satan, as Jesus exorcised a demon from, I think it was a woman, and cast them into a herd of sheep which ran off a cliff. Demons are inherently evil in Christianity because they are doing the bidding of Satan. They are here to either possess you to do evil things, or they're either here to make you to possess you to do evil things, or to just destroy you, physically, mentally, whatever. I think that lays out a pretty good picture of demons. Now, I would like to go to the hands. Let's start with Quarter. You wanted to say something?
No. So typically, and this is coming from a Christian standpoint, when we endeavor to have these type of conversations, somebody has to pray over the space because the demons are going, whenever there's a force, there's going to be that opposing force. And so I'm going to say a prayer. I don't need to be on the space because I know everybody are not believers, but I will say a prayer. I will say a prayer over this space. Don't and I will say that. Keep your mic closed. And because the demons come in and they derail and they'll throw the whole thing off, and you'll lose the goal that you're trying to accomplish here, Aaron. So just thought I'd throw that in there. I'm going to say a prayer offline here. I got some work to do anyway.
All right, thanks for that. Thank you very much. Yeah, we do need a lot more prayer, especially in places such as Hollywood. They definitely need God. They are so incredibly hedonistic. If there's any place where the demons are, because nowadays we ask, where are the demons? I mean, if they were abundant in the olden times, in Jesus' time, where are they right now? And that is a very good question. Now, according to Jewish tradition, the rabbis came together and cast them out through immense power and immense prayer, because they were so inherently destructive that they just had to be dealt with. So now they are in places such as the Amazon jungle. They basically still exist, but they are in places where no humans walk the earth. They are in places where, secluded from society, they just survive there, whatever they do, whatever they have to do. Again, they don't seek to be near humans. They only seek to do whatever they have to do in their own time, in their own places. But nonetheless, I think that, while most may live in jungles, in areas where humans don't walk around, it seems to be the case that they actually have found haven in Hollywood. They have found haven in certain places where these kinds of so-called freakouts, like Diddy did, happen. So it seems to be the case that they are still among human beings, and they still influence what we do. And I wouldn't be surprised if they possessed a few human beings in Hollywood that push this degeneracy, this absolute garbage filth that we see nowadays in this society. This needs to be dealt with appropriately, immediately, and utterly. But let's go back to this. Let's go back to the theology of it all, because I find this very interesting. The theology of Judaism and Christianity, how they see demons. Because again, in Judaism, the demons or Satan does not have any free will. He has to do God's bidding. Now, I had a discussion with somebody privately about this, and it was pretty interesting, because what he was arguing was that it actually doesn't really make any sense that Satan doesn't have any autonomy, and he has to have autonomy, he has to have free will, because Satan does have a character, and a character implies that he has free will. Otherwise, there is no character to speak of. And Satan needs to have free will in order to try to get you to do evil things. And furthermore, his argument was actually pretty good. This is a pretty good argument, that wouldn't it mean that God is trying to get you to sin? If Satan doesn't have any free will, and he is a proxy for God to get you to do the wrong thing, that means that God is trying to get you to do the wrong thing, because he needs there to be a conflict. So doesn't that mean that God himself is tempting you to do evil? But God is all good. How can God try to tempt you to do something that's evil? Which is a very good question. So my answer to that was very simple: that it is not that God himself is getting you to do evil things. God created Satan to act as a proxy for God, but it is his choice. So Satan can decide for however he wants you to sin. Such as, my proof with this is, which one was it? I think it was Job, who was a moral man back in the earliest human beings. Was a human being called Job. He was a moral human being who never cursed out God, never attacked God, never did anything bad. But then Satan came along and said, God, I bet I can get this guy to sin. God was like, okay, I hear you. I bet you can't. And he was like, I think I can get him to sin. I'm telling you, God, I can get him to sin. Okay, God told him, well, I would like to see you try. So I think that now, of course, I just used your a bit of storytelling, liberty of how it actually went down. I think how it actually went down that he told God that, may I have permission to get him to sin. So this is Satan asking God for permission to get him to sin. If Satan is his own being, it doesn't need to ask God to get somebody to sin. Then why ask in the first place? This means that Satan cannot tempt anybody unless he asks God for permission, and God has given him that warrant, that authority to tempt people. And of course, he tempted. He tried to get him to sin, and Satan took away his wife, his children, his money, and everything. And he did not sin. He did not curse out God, and then God gave him back everything that he lost. So what you see here is that Satan needs the authority of God in order to get people to sin, meaning that Satan cannot rebel against God, meaning there is no duality, meaning that God is all powerful. And the moment if Satan were to ever try to sin against God, or Satan would try to rebel against God, he would cease to exist. He can't. It's impossible for Satan to go against God, according to Judaism. In Christianity, you create a duality where there is the force of God, then there is the force of Satan. And Satan is kind of like a god. He is also powerful. He gets you to sin, and he gains power by you sinning. So there's a duality here, which in Judaism would be heresy. It would be blasphemy. It cannot exist. So this gives you an understanding of why Jews would reject Jesus or reject Christianity, because we have problems in the theology of it all. It's not that, the Pharisees were these evil people. They weren't. They had inherent problems with the theology of Christianity. And instead of working it out and trying to explain itself, you have a lot of times where Christianity killed the Jews. Instead of trying to explain themselves, they were less willing to do so. So this is a very important part of it. So I think these kinds of conversations, when you get down to, okay, what is this really about? You try to understand, okay, this is what Christianity believes, this is what Judaism believes. I see here we have somebody who wants to speak. We will allow to speak in just a moment. But these kinds of conversations are imperative in order to understand each other. Otherwise, you would have people talking past each other, and this entire conversation is worthless unless people understand where we're coming from, where Judaism is coming from, where Christianity is coming from. Be very open and very blunt about our message, and then seek a way to reconcile the two. Okay, well, let me see. So, No Quarter, you wanted to say something? No Quarter, you wanted to say something? Nothing. All right. So.
Oh yeah. Hey, Aaron.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
I was on a different page. Had to jump back over. But
yeah, sure.
I invited Jambalaya up in here. I think there's Jill's in here too. Some pretty well versed individuals when it comes to the topic. So just to let you know, they're in here. I'm busy working, but just to give you some something to sharpen your iron on. Appreciate it.
Yes, excellent. So let's hear from Jambalaya. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Aaron and Cameron. It's good to meet you guys for the first time. I don't think I've ever crossed your paths, but shalom to both of you. So I heard a few things that you said, Aaron, and I just kind of wanted to challenge a few things.
Excellent. This is exactly why we're having this space. I want people to challenge me because I want to understand more, and I will challenge back accordingly. But go ahead. Say what you have to say.
Okay, so I think a few things that are important is I hear a lot of conflating of terms, and there are some presumptions made, which is understandable because a lot of times you have to use words that are familiar to people. But I'll give you a quick background. I was raised up in Buddhism, left Buddhism as a child, or I should say as a teenager, then got into Christianity as a young adult, and then left Christianity, and then became full-fledged. I guess the only term you could call it is a alleged Torah keeper, meaning in the best of my ability as I understood the things that were in the Torah, because as I'm sure you're aware of, in a lot of denominations of Christianity, there's this glossing over and a lot of replacement theology. And so my husband and I endeavored to look into what the front part of the book actually said. And we learned that a lot of the moedim and things like this were still applicable, not only for the Jewish people, but whosoever would endeavor to serve Hashem. being that Gentiles only know about him through the Jews. And because we understood that in order to be a part of Israel's following of the Most High God, we would have to do what the Most High God prescribed. Otherwise, there's a God that's segregating people via ethnicity and culture. And I don't see how that would exist in his kingdom. So whether you believe in Yeshua as the Messiah or not is irrelevant to what I'm saying. It's just that for me, as someone who found out fairly quickly after a number of years, I've been endeavoring to walk into Torah about over 13 years now, and my husband and my children and I have been doing this consistently. We're not accepted into the Christian church. We're in fact kicked out. We lost family members and everything because we were accused of trying to be Jews, and we said, no, we just serve a God of the Jews. So I need to just make that clear so you know where I'm coming from. Second, because of that, you can imagine that when you say, well, Christianity says ... but Judaism says ... For some of your listeners who don't fall into either category, because I'm obviously not a Jew, I'm not even a Messianic, right? I'm not a complete Jew. I'm a Gentile who is following the ways of Scripture in a way that's not conducive to Christianity or acceptable, and also carefully have to tread with my Jewish brethren because they presume that I'm trying to steal their inheritance. So I'm in a very, very precarious place. Right? A big supporter of Israel, and Corda can tell you I'm very loud and proud on Twitter supporting Israel. I get a lot of flack for that from my from my Christian friends, and also from some of the Jews. So imagine me coming in the space and hearing you say Christianity teaches. Number one, which Christianity? Are you speaking about the Christianity that developed around the 4th, 5th century? Are you talking about, which denominations are you talking about? Because I think it makes more sense to try to compare biblical faith, because not everybody is in Christianity that walks out biblical faith. Even those that believe in Yeshua as the Messiah are not a part of Christianity, not a part of the Catholic Church. In fact, we're not wanted in that group. We're in fact, no quarter can tell you, I used to host spaces every Shabbat, and I get a lot of pushback from Christians accusing me of trying to put people in bondage. I got called a Pharisee because I'm trying to tell people that obeying the Torah is actually a godly thing to do. It's one of the highest things you can do to show that you have real belief, that actions come out from real belief. And so I'm, ironically enough, called a Pharisee, which I completely I love it, and I post memes of Pharisees, and I go ahead and have fun with it because I'm like, fine, it's your neighborhood black female Pharisee. I don't think there's ever been such a thing, but here I am. And so I just want to maybe encourage you, not to tell you how to run your space, that in a space you have so many people from so many different walks of life. Not everybody is a Christian. I think it's better to preface it biblical faith, those that hold to the Bible, right? And don't maybe call themselves Christians, because let's be fair, the Bible does not support Christianity. It doesn't speak of Christianity. In fact, the word Christian is only used 3 times, and it's used from the perspective of being called a Christian in a derogatory sense. But these Jews that followed the Messiah called themselves the Brethren, the Way. They did not, Talmudim, they did not call themselves Christians. This is something that has been put onto Scripture. And I often tell Christians, quit trying to absorb the Scriptures and make them support Christianity. If you want to call yourself a Christian, that's fine, but understand that the Bible gives no such nomenclature. It doesn't support it. It doesn't encourage it. It doesn't even look at it, because Christianity wasn't even in existence when the scriptures were given or written down. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that not everybody is a Christian, and there are some people that really fall in the middle. And maybe let's argue what Judaism says about demons compared to what the scriptures, all of them, say about demons. Because I don't know how familiar you are with the Brit Hadashah, but it also has a lot of, demoniacs and interactions with demons, with people having them, being possessed by them and whatnot. And it does, in Revelation and Apocrypha, mention Hasatan a lot, and also the beast and these other things that I don't know how Judaism interacts with those terms, being that a lot of sects of Judaism don't even really deal with the Brit Hadashah. So, yeah, just want to throw that out there. And forgive me for being long-winded, trying to squeeze a lot in a small space of time.
Well, I have to say, there's nothing to forgive, since you were way better than the other person, not no quarter, the other person before him. So, yeah, there's that. And you bring up some excellent points. Let me address them. The first point that I would like to address is that the calling you a Pharisee. I mean, I find it hilarious because Pharisee means Orthodox Jew. I mean, if I were living 2,000 years ago, I would be a Pharisee because I'm an ultra-Orthodox Jew. That's what it means. And for the record, for those who are, oh no, a Pharisee, everybody needs to really calm the hell down. Jesus himself was a Pharisee. Everything only points to the conclusion that Jesus himself was a Pharisee, later rejected the Pharisees, calling them hypocrites, vipers, and all the other things, but never actually rejected the Talmud, never actually rejected the law itself. He said he was there to fulfill the law, and his problem was with them being hypocrites because they didn't care for their fellow man. And he was not that far off the mark, even according to Orthodox Judaism, because we understand that at the time there was sinus chinam, which means free hatred. That's a literal translation, or what would be nowadays translated to a hatred just because. I hate you because. There's no actual reason for hating him. Just, I hate you. And this was the actual problem back in the day. Jesus said to live more or less live by the golden rule, and you had a lot of, there was not enough living by that. As a matter of fact, even the New Testament places Jesus in the care of Hillel the elder, who was the head of the Sanhedrin, and he, when asked by a Gentile, "Can you teach me the entire Torah on one foot?" And the rabbi said, "Yes, I can do that." Basically, the entire Torah boils down to, do as you would do good to your neighbors, do to your neighbors, and anything that hurts another person, don't do that. Basically, treat them as you want to be treated. Everything else is commentary. That's his words. Everything else is commentary, but the golden rule, that is basically more or less what the Torah is. So you can see that Jesus actually learned from his Rabbi Hillel, who was again the rabbi of the Sanhedrin. He was the lead, and he was one of the greats. You can learn a lot from him in the Talmud. Long story short is that he was the leader, and he had a practice called the House of Hillel, and his greatest rabbi, who was against him, but a friendly opponent, was Shammai. So they had epic, legendary battles, these two, in Talmudic studies and Torah learning. Anyway, I'm getting off track here. The point is that Jesus himself, he was a Pharisee, grew up there, he was one of them, later on rejected them. We're not revisionists, of course. We're going to go and be very accurate. He was circumcised on the 8th day. He celebrated Hanukkah, which is a made-up holiday by the Pharisees. Of course, he was a Pharisee. Furthermore, Paul called himself a Pharisee's Pharisee. Why call yourself a Pharisee's Pharisee? Unless if you're trying to say that Phariseeism is the gold standard of Judaism, because you had certain other sects, and the biggest of whom were the Sadducees, who were a complete joke, utterly not real Jews. And furthermore, for those who hate the Talmud, I have huge news for you. The Talmud was the gold standard of Judaism, even by Jesus' standard. The Sadducees did not follow the Talmud. They did not follow the oral law, but none of the people who lived at the time claimed to be Sadducees. Why is that? Because they were the laughing stock. Because they were the 5 books of Moses and the prophets and the writings. They were basically the Old Testament and the 5 books of Moses without the oral Torah. That's what it took to be a Sadducee. Okay, so the Sadducees, they were a joke. No early Christian claimed to be a Sadducee because they were a joke. Paul tried to claim that he was a Pharisee because that is the gold standard. Jesus was a Pharisee. He was a rabbi. He had his own practice. Anyway, we're getting off track here. Back to the main point. Is that is kind of funny. Calling you a Pharisee, I would be considered a Pharisee if I lived back in the day. All right, so that is the first point that I addressed. The second is that what you made is, you asked me about Christianity, which kind of Christianity I'm talking about. Okay, let me, first of all, I see here somebody wants to talk. I will bring him up as speaker, but you're going to have to wait, all right? Wait a moment, I will finish my point, then I will go to you, okay? So here's my answer to your question about which kind of Christianity. I'm talking about mainstream Christianity. I'm not talking about, there are a whole bunch of sects of Christianity. One that claims that Jesus was not God, but he was the Messiah. There's a whole different types of Christianity, especially when it comes to the early days of Christianity. There were, the Gnostics. They were a complete loony bin of crazies that the Council of Nicaea threw out completely, because they were like, who the hell do you think you're talking about? Like, you go into the earlier writings, you're like, what the hell? You're constructing a world that doesn't even make any sense. I can't even explain it. Okay, so here's my main point. I'm talking about mainstream Christianity, the one that talks about Revelation, where there would be the end times, there would be a war between God and the devil, otherwise known as Satan. So that means that there is a duality here. Otherwise, what is the point of a war between God and the devil? That means he has free will. There has to be. That is the only logical conclusions that I could be led to. Now, of course, I know what you might have a problem with. This was more or less what your problem was. That make sure that I am portraying Christianity in giving it, a fair shake, not just
No. I got to stop you. Not at all, because remember, that's why I made very clear. I don't come from the ethos of that. I've walked away from that. So I don't want you to present. I mean, you're in Judaism. I would never expect you to give Christianity a fair shake, because I don't. Right?
I do.
Well, I don't.
I do, at least.
Well, no, I give Christians a fair shake. I don't give Christianity a fair shake, because it's a subculture of a culture. But I guess my point was, like, even when you said, well, in the Apocrypha, it talks about Satan fighting against God. No, it does not. Can you tell me where that passage is? It talks about Satan raising up an army or working through people, which you very clearly earlier, as you mentioned Job, he does do, right? Because you said that he's the opponent. And I would argue that if you're opposing God, you are against God. I mean, Antichrist, even in the Apocrypha, literally means in place of, right?
Listen.
And against. Okay. But I don't want you to think that I want you to support Christianity or any message of it.
No. Yeah, I know that. I understand.
Okay.
No, my claim wasn't the opponent to God. My point is the opponent to humanity. Satan is the opponent that we all have to combat in our daily lives. And by the way, in Judaism, Satan would be the greatest gift God gave to man, and that is that we have a choice now to decide between good and bad. We have the ultimate power, the closest thing that human beings will ever come to being God, which we will never do. We are not God. We can't even reach that level. We will never reach that level. But the closest we ever come to being God is that we have free will and that we can decide between good and evil. That is the greatest gift God gave to man.
So you're saying, I'm sorry, Aaron, I just got to ask a question before you continue. So are you saying that Lucifer is not personified in an entity? It's a thing we're fighting against within ourselves? Is that what you're saying?
Lucifer, in my opinion, doesn't exist because we have different names here. Lucifer, the devil, we have Satan. Satan exists. Lucifer is a Christian name given to Satan. So in Judaism, you have no Lucifer, you only have Satan, which is Satan, which means the opponent. Again, the opponent to humanity, to humans, on doing the good or bad thing. That's basically more or less. So Lucifer in Judaism does not exist.
So the enemy in the garden, in Bereshit, when it talks about the serpent, you believe that to be a literal serpent? Is it a figment of Eve's imagination? Or is it a demonic entity that is, of course, we know that scripture often uses how can I say it? It uses language that's kind of codified, right? It's not to be taken literal. So I don't believe it was a literal serpent. But do you believe that there was something that was opposing Eve, but had primarily been created? Because see, my issue is there's nothing that's created that God didn't make. So if I take that to be true, then I would have to say this thing that was coming against humanity was doing so as trying to thumb its nose at Yahweh. So I'm trying to understand like what your understanding of Hasatan is. If you say it's not a real thing, then that means that Eve was speaking to whom and was controlled by him.
You misunderstood. I'm not saying the Satan is not a real thing. I'm saying Lucifer doesn't exist.
Okay, but Lucifer is just another name in another language.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, but again, Lucifer is another name. So Lucifer, the name, doesn't exist. Satan, the concept, does exist. It is a angel, one of the angels of God.
Gotcha.
And he is, and asking if he was in the Garden of Eden. Let me say something very interesting. That this is probably, again, I understand why Christians can't accept this because this is Jewish writings. It's not Christian writings. But it's still interesting to think about that in the Zohar, it states that there is and it doesn't say that this is what you should think. It's telling you what if. It's basically a what if or what about or maybe. So it's not telling you this is what actually happened. Okay, so I need you to understand. Okay. It gives you an interesting perspective on the eating of the fruit of knowledge. It's stating that maybe or what if or whatever, eating from the fruit of knowledge was not an actual sin. What does that mean? Now, of course, this is heresy for Christians because original sin. That is original sin. But in Judaism, original sin doesn't really exist. as in the 5 books of Moses, it states that a father will not suffer for the sins of his son, the son will not suffer for the sins of his father, everybody will be punished for their own sins, so I cannot suffer for the sins of Adam. So that's more or less, that's another thing to consider. But maybe it wasn't even a sin. Maybe what the Zohar is trying to explain, that now of course, wait a minute, mainstream Judaism does accept it as a sin, but the Zohar comes along that says, let's think about it a different way, because Judaism is built on questions upon questions upon questions. You ask a Jew a question, he'll answer you with a different question. One Jew, 5 opinions. This is basically what Judaism is, more or less. So this is the concept, that maybe this wasn't really a sin. This was basically God telling to Adam and Eve, saying that, listen, I created a perfect world. Everything's perfect, everything is beautiful, there's nothing wrong here. I can't get you to sin. You have to sin on your own choice. I'm going to present to you this one tree, which you cannot eat its fruits of. You have no right to eat the fruit because it's going to be a sin. But I need you to eat its fruits because I need the rest of history to unfold. If you guys reject by eating from this fruit, then no humanity will be born. Nothing will happen. You two are just going to live here in heaven for the rest of eternity. Nothing's going to happen. And this is the beginning and the end, period. Point blank range. Nothing happens. Everything that we know that exists never comes into existence. It's your choice. You can create the beautiful concept of humanity by giving birth, by all these things happening, or you could choose to live, it's more or less a selfish point, but you could choose to live the way it is now by not eating. I'm giving you this tree. This is your choice. Now, of course, you have then the serpent telling you that you should eat it, and we all know that, but that is basically more or less the concept of, okay, then you have the serpent, the evil inclination trying to get you to sin. Fine. It gives humans, beware of the serpent, beware of the evil inclination, beware of the Satan, beware of them. But nonetheless, what the Zohar does there, it gives you a perspective that maybe it wasn't even a sin. Maybe it was God saying that I do not control your life. You are in control of your life so far as you get to decide what your destiny is going to be. Do you want your destiny to be that the entirety of humanity doesn't exist, that you get to live here and live in paradise forever and ever? This is the beginning and the end of humanity. Or do you want to create humanity? You will suffer. I will cast you out. You will have to suffer. You will go out through all these hardships. Your descendants will have to suffer for the rest of time. Which road do you choose? This is basically what the Zohar is telling you. So this is a very interesting thing to think about how far God does not control your life, because he wants you to be in control of it. He does not. I know when we talk about miracles, God influences the world. I believe that God used to influence the world, doing miracles by what my definition of a miracle is something supernatural. So by splitting the Red Sea, by the 10 plagues, or stopping the sun in the middle of the war when Joshua was fighting. These are absolute miracles. Literally everything else is a miracle. Everything is a miracle, including me speaking, because it's an act of God. But my definition of a miracle is basically supernatural. Nowadays, I would say nothing supernatural happens, more or less, nowadays. That's because God is leaving it up to us. We get to decide the destiny. We do. He can, but just doesn't get involved. That's what I think is going on now. But this is how far God wants you to understand how in control you are of your own life. You have the total and complete and utter freedom of will to do the right thing. And I'm giving you, as God, I am giving you a reason why to sin. Because now you have an opponent that tells you, hey, you should sin. You should do this. You should do that. You should do this. Because otherwise, you would never sin. No normal person, no person in their right mind is going to read the 5 books of Moses and going to read the Old Testament or even the New Testament and then decide, you know what? It's a good idea to sin. No human being is going to do that. But by having the opponent tell you have to sin, you should do this, oh, it's going to be so good, I promise you all these wonderful things will happen. You'll be rich, you'll have all the women, you will have all the sex in your life, you will be loved, you have fame, glory, everything, I promise you everything. Now there's a reason to sin. Otherwise you would just follow God. You have to have a reason to sin. So this is what opponent does. Now, in Judaism, there is a point to be made about and I'm finishing with this, then I'm going to the hands. There is one point to be made about the opponent. The opponent, or Satan, he goes a step too far. That his job is to literally get you to sin. Now, you can't punish Satan for doing his job. That's why you were created. Imagine God creating a being that is there to do a certain thing, then does the thing, and then punishes him. Doesn't really make any sense. Like, you created me to do this. I'm doing what you're asking me. What Satan needs to be punished for is not that he's trying to get humans to sin. That's his job. He is getting punished for, he is lying to you. He's telling you that, hey, if you do this, this is the right thing. This is not a sin, this is a virtue. Okay, now you're going above and beyond what God ordered you. God ordered you to get people to sin, which was fine. Up until the point you started lying to people, saying that, no, this is a virtue. This is what God wants. Okay, now you're a liar. Now you're a deceiver. Now you need to get punished. So now let's go. I want to go to whose hand was up the earliest. Jill, go ahead.
Okay, so there was a lot there to take in. So the first thing that I would say is this, is that I think you're correct, but that even Christian religions, in particular Catholic and Orthodox, teach that free will is the ultimate gift that God has given us, and that it was free will that Eve exercised when she listened to the snake and ate the apple off the tree. Okay, it is the free will that, why Moses wasn't allowed into the promised land, because he chose to doubt the providence of God. I understand where you're coming from with that in terms of Judaic teaching. I think it's important to recognize that in Romans, in the New Testament, Paul's letter to the Romans, in particular 11, 16 through, I'd say probably 24, okay? He specifically talks about being grafted into the trunk of the tree, which is clearly a reference to the trunk of the tree being Judaism as the chosen people. Okay, and that it is separated out to make room for new believers, and that you are grafted into that tree. And I think, I may have come in a few minutes late, so I'm not exactly sure, because based on the topic, I don't think that's the discussion we're having at the moment. If we're talking about the existence of demons, and I heard you say that you think there isn't that much supernatural going on, I would beg to differ. In fact, I think there is an intense amount of supernatural activity happening around us in the world every minute, and in fact, I think it's actually gotten worse in the last few, I'd say, 6 months to 8 months. I think everything we are seeing right now is a metaphysical battle of good and evil, whether it is in human form, whether it's in politics, whether it is, crime, you name it. There's clearly diabolic influence from Gehenna, and there is a battle going on between good and evil. There are those who I believe to be spiritually sensitive because they are people of faith, and I'm not going to restrict it to any one type of faith. I'm going to say if they are people of faith, they can see it with their hearts. They are able to sense it coming off of people. Some people can even, so much as I would say, go forward and smell it even. I mean, it's so painfully evident what's happening. And I think we are in the throes of a huge battle. And I think your point, which is that Satan, i.e. the snake, the demon, whatever you want to call him, was the original purpose as a test, perhaps, to tempt us to see if we would use our free will properly and maturely and choose God over sin, or would we fall prey to our human weaknesses? Perhaps. But Satan's fall from grace, in Christianity, it's taught that Lucifer, which was his angelic name, the bearer of light, was the most beautiful of all the angels. He was the big kahuna. And that because of his arrogance and his jealousy over God's love for mankind, he and his minions fell and were run out of heaven. and are like I said, in the fires of Gehenna, and that's where they suffer. And they every time they are out and about, they're only allowed out and about because God allows it. And when God has had enough, they will be done. And that teaching is pretty prevalent through most Christian religions. I think it's prevalent even in some of the non-Christian religions. And I think that we can't just dismiss the metaphysical that's happening in the world around us right now. It's every day. It's everywhere you go. You can see it. You literally can watch the news and see it on people's faces and hear it in their tones, and it's really extreme, in my opinion.
Thanks for that. Yes, I do. First, I would like to thank you because you helped me prove my point about the Satan. In Christianity, Satan does have free will as he rebels against God. He thinks that he is the beautiful among all the angels. He's the best. He's the brightest, and he should have all the glory to himself. Yeah. So more or less, thanks for proving what I was trying to get at. That in Christianity, generally speaking, in mainstream Christianity, Satan is his own being, and because of that, he becomes a duality to God, where there will be a final battle between him and God. In Judaism, no such thing can exist. Satan can never rebel against God because God is all-powerful. He has no right to do so. If he does, he ceases to exist immediately. He can only do what God commanded him to do. That's the view of Judaism, and therefore, demons are not the... This is where this ties into. Demons are not the spawn of Satan. What it actually is, demons are the spawn of Lilith, Adam's first wife. There's a whole bunch of... If you want to look at this up, there's a whole bunch of story on that.
Oh no, I'm familiar with the Lilith story, and
Yeah.
and it's right up there with the whole Nephilim and all that too. And I understand exactly where you're going with this. Either way, whether it's demons as a spawn of Satan, I like to call them his minions. Okay, either way, they have chosen to reject God, and their rejection has put them into the eternal fire. And I think you and I are really close in what we're trying to say here, which is that even Catholics, for example, and I can speak to this pretty ardently, they don't believe that Satan has more power than God. They don't believe that he has equal power to God. In fact, they are fully aware that God will defeat Satan quite heartily. And in fact, if you want to look at, and I appreciate your Judaism, if we're going to talk about the sacrifice of Christ on the cross, that was an act of war. That was an act of war against evil and against devil. Christ sacrificing himself on the cross. And you were saying earlier about how Christ was actually a very what was the word you used? Traditional Jew.
He was an Orthodox Jew.
He was an Orthodox Jew. Literally, as in the New Testament, as he hung on the cross dying, one of the very last things he did was make sure that his mother was being taken care of. He was honoring his mother and his father, which of course is one of the Ten Commandments. He lived his life by Torah. There is no question about it whatsoever. And I mean, even the celebration of the Passover, all of those things. So you are, I would agree with you 100% right. The problem came in that when he did call out politically the Pharisees and the Sadducees for being, arrogant, for being self-consumed, for not doing what they were actually called to do, for misinterpreting, misrepresenting, and not applying the law appropriately. That's when it was political. But his crucifixion, in Christian terms, was literally an act of war against the selfish of the devil. Or of Satan, if you want to call Satan.
Yep, that is definitely the perspective of Christianity, yes. And, you add also the part on that he was a Pharisee. So this is, now, I need you to understand, what you're saying is a little provocative to certain Christians because they say that he rejected the Pharisees, except they don't really look into his early life. He absolutely was a Pharisee, later on rejecting them, calling them vipers and hypocrites.
Yeah, I think he was trying to get him in line. I think what he was doing was trying to say, knock it off. You have this gift to preach and to interpret and to lead people, and you're not doing it right. I think he was trying to slap him in the line, in my opinion. And they, because of their humanity and their arrogance and everything else, completely warped what it was he was trying to do. And so his rejection was of their behavior and of their interpretation and of their application, and not of them as the entity. He was saying, look, you were chosen to do this job and you're screwing it up. That's what I think.
Yep, yes, that is more or less the main. I would say that is more or less the Christian mainstream view. Okay, let's go to. I want to go to Jambalaya again, but wait, Jambalaya, you already had time to speak, so I want to go to Chris. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about you. Let's go first to Chris because he hasn't spoken yet. Chris, go ahead.
You can go to her, that's fine.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead and go back to her, that's fine.
Go ahead, Jambalaya.
Thank you, Aaron. Yeah, so I did have a couple of things I wanted to kind of attack too. When I say attack, I mean what you said, obviously. So you said previously, and you said it a couple of times, that Satan is not opposing Yahweh. He's not opposing God. He's only going to get confronted, and correct me if I'm paraphrasing you incorrectly, but that he's only going to be judged because he lied to humanity. Do I have that right?
More or less, yes. He through the power of the evil inclination does lie to you by obfuscating virtue and doing what God wants you by telling you, hey, you should redistribute the wealth because that is the right thing to do. You should sacrifice your children to Moloch because then you'll have prosperity. That is what he's doing.
Okay, so but I'm just going to be clear. You specifically said that he's not going to the Lord because this is the implicit job given to him. So he's only fulfilling the obligation, but that specifically he's going to be judged for lying to humanity. So I just want to kind of touch on that because I think you don't have one without the other. This is my perspective, and this is not a Christian perspective because most of Christianity doesn't agree with this. The Bible, and I like to just stick to that, not because I'm not terrified of other books. I was actually just reading Baruch chapter 53 last night and comparing it to the Torah portion where it talked about how those that were judged would eat the flesh of their own children, and I was actually looking at how they had similarities, even though these are books that are not really read or looked at. So I'm not scared of any of these things. And I do have the apocryphal books that have been kicked out the scripture, and I do read through them because there's a lot in there that's pretty good meat. However, I do take issue with this one particular thing. If Satan is a created entity, right, which you said yourself, and I agree, that means he has a limitation in what he can do, and I totally agree with you there. I don't believe, like most in Christianity, that there's these like dumb renditions done where it shows like God arm wrestling with Satan. Like that could never happen, okay, because he's a defeated foe. He already comes here with limitations. God, however, is not limited. God doesn't have to wonder and think and meditate on things. These words are used so that they're relative to human beings. When it talks about the sacrifices are a pleasing aroma. I mean, God doesn't have a big nostril in the skies smelling the sacrifices. We obviously know this, right? It's to try to relate to humanity and how we understand things. So if Satan is a created entity and God is not a created entity, yes, Satan is limited. But also, when God created, I'm sorry, I'm getting a phone call, so forgive me if you hear the cutting out. When God created Satan and the other angels, and he created humankind, the angels were created for a specific purpose. Do you agree with that? Because God doesn't create things just to be created because he's bored.
To serve God, but they do not have a choice in doing so. They have to serve God. That's what they're created. The moment they so-called decide not to do so, they cease to exist.
Okay, so that's where I think the problem is for me, because if God creates for the purpose of something, it's implicit within the purpose that you can, it doesn't mean you can win. It doesn't mean that you'll be able to do the opposite and be successful. It means that you can choose to do the opposite. And by choosing to do the opposite and having free will, because once you're created to be a servant, you're not forced to serve. They prove this by actually walking away, which I think Jill kind of even alluded to. They chose not to serve. And in scripture, not in Christianity, it makes very clear that Satan saw himself as being someone that would bring himself up to a position of high status like God. I will raise myself up and be in the clouds, because he saw God as being someone to compete with. Now, this is implicit in humanity only because, no, I don't believe that we were just we weren't born with a sin nature because Adam and Eve just passed it on to us. Because the Bible makes very clear that the sons don't suffer the sins of the father. That would not be in God's character. However, there is a predisposition to more be inclined to sin, the evil inclination, which you brought up, which means we have the choice. So I think the problem for me, and I know a lot of people in Christianity who also do this, they juxtapose or they conflate the fact that God has foreknowledge, and they conflate that with, well, since God already knew it would happen, he's making it happen. That's not true. I'll give a good example. Everyone knows the story of Pharaoh. Within Christian circles, it's often taught that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Therefore, Pharaoh could do no other but the will of God. But this is the piece they're missing. He hardened Pharaoh's heart because he had foreknowledge that he would never submit. But notice, even though he knew that, he gave him chance after chance after chance. Chance after chance, and he still used what he would do, having foreknowledge, against him to fulfill his purpose. That's not the same thing as you don't have a choice. Same thing with Judas. What did Yeshua say? Yeshua said, I chose the 12 of you, but one of you is a devil. And then we have Judas dipping his bread, right, with Jesus at the same time. And what does Yeshua say? Go and do what you're going to do, and do it quickly. And it says, there Satan entered him. We only ever have a mention of Satan entering a man here and in the Apocrypha when it talks about the anti-Messiah, the anti-Mashiach. So I just wanted to say that maybe another way of looking at it also is not just that, well, you have no choice but to do the will of God. Not so, because then wouldn't that make God unjust for punishing you for something you have no will against? You have the free will to choose to do the opposite. What you don't have the free will to do is choose the outcome of that choice. Thank you.
Yeah, that's actually pretty good analysis on, again, the Christian perspective on this. And I would also like to make a point about what you said about Pharaoh. This is actually, that is one of actually the arguments that Judaism brings forth, that Pharaoh, it's not that Pharaoh didn't have a choice in it, it's that God gave him the need. He was not going to make the choice anyway, so hardened hearts to make it easier for him. So that is a little bit of divine intervention to help Pharaoh, since you're going to have to suffer the 10 plagues. This is what's going to have to happen. So here, let me help you out. You're going to have a hardened heart. We're going to give you the strength in order to withstand it, because otherwise you're just going to die. You're not going to be able to survive this. It's going to end with you just dying after the first plague. You're not going to be able to survive this. You need to have a hardened heart in order to withstand the wrath of God. So it's not that God is taking away his free will, it's that God is strengthening his heart in order for him to survive, in order to see through the end of all the plagues. Otherwise, he wouldn't have survived. Nothing. He wouldn't have been able to comprehend the magnificence of power that God brings before him. Because the interesting thing about what I think most people do not understand about the 10 plagues, each and every plague was meant to make fun of and humiliate the false gods of the Egyptians. The plague of blood was to make fun of the Nile River, which was also a deity for the Egyptians. They believed the Nile to be a sort of god. So God said, well, your entire Nile River has turned into blood. So joke's on you. Your God is weak, has no bearing here. Furthermore, there's another deity that also represented water. I don't remember which one, but made fun of that one. then go through the. I don't remember all the Egyptian deities and all the shapes. They have like falcon, owl. They have all kinds of deities. The head of a, I don't know, lion, and they have one for an alligator. I think that one is the one that represents the Nile. So all of those deities have been humiliated thoroughly by God. That is a very important part to the equation when we talk about God punishing the Egyptians. All right, so interlocutor, you requested to speak. Go ahead, say your piece.
Hi. Thank you. Well, I'm adding something. Actually, you were saying part of what I was going to say about why those plagues existed. They were to defeat every Egyptian god and goddess that they were worshiping at the time, which God had already intended. Number 10 is the number of judgment. So God had authorized 10 plagues to be consistent with the way He often applies judgment. And the comment that I wanted to add last is that we see that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. We don't know that that's not the way God does it other times as well. We only have this example. But I do know that when a person resists the will of God, we know that hearts are hardened. We don't know if God does it or it's just a consequence of sin and defying God. In this case, we know that God did it. But that doesn't mean that's not the case often or some other times. We see other examples where people's hearts are hardened, and maybe it doesn't explain that God did it. But when there's a consequence, when you defy the will of God and deliberately, it's harder. God makes it harder to submit to the will of God. You have to put out extra effort. You have to repent. There are things you have to do. He makes you overcome what you did. So, but I'm pretty tired right now, and I'm really not that articulate. But that was the point that I was trying to make, and I really appreciate this conversation.
Well, we're happy to have you on here because you made some very good points about God sometimes hardening the heart of certain people, especially when it comes to the case of Pharaoh. Although I'll give you some pushback on that, which I don't believe that this is the case nowadays. I do believe that back in the day, under Pharaoh, God did harden his heart, as it is obviously stated. But nowadays, I don't believe that God would do that because He wants it to be completely, fully, and utterly in your hands. You are in charge of your own destiny. Now, the other person brought up a very interesting point about if God is all-knowing. I think that's what Jambalaya said earlier, that if God is all-knowing, then doesn't that mean that you've already predestined to do whatever God knows you're going to do, which means that you don't really have any freedom of will. Whatever God knows you are going to do, it's already predestined. You can't go against God's knowing of the future. So she didn't say it exactly like this, but something pretty close to that. So I will touch on that and explain that is actually a fallacy. It's not that because God knows what you're going to do, you're going to do it. It's because you are going to do it, God already knows you are going to do it. It's basically the same as saying that if I know that Kim is going to go tomorrow and she's going to go eat a sandwich that has, I don't know, peanut butter and jelly. Okay, peanut butter and jelly sandwich tomorrow. I know this. I know Kim so well. I know basically everything about her that I know this is going to happen tomorrow, and she actually does it. Can I then go and say, well, Kim didn't have any actual free will because I already knew that she's going to do it. No, she obviously did have freedom of will, regardless if I knew that she's going to do it. The freedom of will doesn't reside within God. God gave it to you. God is all-knowing. He knows everything that's going to happen. He knows how this all ends. He knows exactly every everything that's going to happen, from the most minuscule breath you take in the morning to your whatever you dream at night. Everything, God knows everything before it happens, exactly how it's going to play out. So that is just God knowing. But nonetheless, you have freedom of will at the end of the day to decide, are you going to eat that peanut butter sandwich? Are you going to do the right thing? God doesn't control your life. Him knowing comes after you deciding you're going to do it at the time. He knows whatever's going to happen in the future, but it's not written down. It's a little bit of a paradox, I have to admit, because if God knows it, then it's more or less written down somewhere, not literally, but it's more or less, it's somewhere, it's already like predestined, like in the mind of God. I mean, God doesn't have a mind. We're just using human language to describe the magnificence of whatever God is. So in the mind of God, it's already written down that you're going to do this because he knows that you're going to do this. So how do you have free will? That presupposes that because God thought of it, you're going to do it. No, you're going to do it, and that's why God thought of it. The action comes first, even though the action is in the future. It is kind of a paradox because it's already predestined in God's mind because he knows you're going to do it, so it's predestined. But the predestiny doesn't happen before you're actually going to do it in the future, because the entire predestiny is happening only because that is exactly what's going to happen. You have already decided that's what's going to happen. I know, paradox and all, but first comes the action, then comes the will to do the action. Go ahead, interlocutor.
Thank you. I just have this comment. Look, Pharaoh was a heathen. I think part of the discussion we're having about free will, predestination, it starts at the point of where we stand before God. And where Pharaoh stood before God was in opposition, and he was a heathen. He was an idol worshiper. And that is different when you compare it with other people and in their position before the Lord. That was my only comment. Thank you.
He was an idol worshiper, and he was an idol himself. He thought of himself as a god, and this is in part why God had to make a point of him at the end of the 10 plagues. The last one, what was the last one? Do you guys remember? That the firstborn child will die. Pharaoh himself was a firstborn child.
Firstborn male. The firstborn male. And that included the animals. Every firstborn male died.
Yes. Every firstborn was killed, and that was another point to say, you think that you are a god? Guess what? Every firstborn, that includes you. Furthermore, not only it includes you, it includes every false deity. That was the all-out assault when God destroyed every single false idol that the Egyptians had. God didn't only kill off the firstborns. He killed off every Egyptian idol. Every statue that stood in Egypt was destroyed. And in part, this is kind of interesting, that Egypt also had certain wars with neighboring countries. They were trying to see how big the borders of Egypt were. When God destroyed the idols, sent the 10 plagues, and everywhere where the plagues touched, that was Egyptian land. So if Egypt laid claim to some territory that Canaan called for themselves, or which Libya didn't exist back then, or the territory of Libya called, no, this is ours, if God's plagues landed in that area, that meant that Libya was in the wrong and it belonged to Egypt. The entirety of Egypt suffered. And that, by the way, goes right down to Ethiopia, because Egypt and Ethiopia was more or less one country back then. They were basically, it's pretty interesting. You would think that they're separate. They're not. They were actually more or less the same country. There's a lot of pyramids in Ethiopia. They more or less have the same pantheon of false idols. They have very similar pharaohs, and hell, some Ethiopian pharaohs went up to Egypt proper and took control of it because they were more or less the same country. They were a little different. but they were more or less the same country. Okay, let's go to Chris, because Chris, we haven't heard anything from you. I would like to hear what you have to say.
Are you sure about that? You may not be sure about that. But anyway.
Yes, I do. I am sure. I want to hear what you have to say.
I do too, Chris, but I just want to mention one thing quickly, and I got to get back to work. And that is, if we replace the word caused, that God caused this, or he made this happen, with the idea that he allowed it, it changes the conversation. So I just wanted to point that out. Thanks.
Go ahead, Chris. Thanks, no Porter. Go ahead, Chris.
I think that's a valid point. I think that your conversation with respect to the demons taking residence in California may be partially mistaken, because I believe that there are an awful lot of them residing on the East Coast as well, and other places that are prominent in the world. For instance, I think there are quite a few demons that regularly meet on Capitol Hill in our federal government, and I think that there are demons that are in Switzerland at the World Economic Forum and the WHO and other organizations like Gavi and in New York City, such as the United Nations, and many organizations like this who are involved in manipulation and the intentional destruction of humanity through their heinous acts, which are anything but godly. And when we watch things like 2019, 2020 occur, and we see governments around the world take away the God-given rights of people and destroy the lives of people, and take their free will away from them by using the free will that they believe they have. You cannot tell me that is not the devil's work. Because I assure you that it is. Because good, godly people don't set out to destroy lives. Good, godly people don't chase away cars in a church parking lot who are listening to a sermon on a car radio when they're trying to experience their the camaraderie of being in a church service, separated but together, and being chased off by a government entity because they're not in their house. They're in an unapproved place. They're in a church parking lot. But if they were in a parking lot at a liquor store, see, that would be perfectly okay. And so I wonder where the real demons reside. And I take offense to the idea that they don't reside there, or that people whose core values include your free will not being in your best interest. It's in the best interest of you that they spend your money, that they tell you how to behave. And that's not to say that there shouldn't be social constructs. But you cannot look at our society and say that the degradation of our country over the last 250 years hasn't happened as a result of demonic invasion. And so too the world. And you can look in poor neighborhoods all over our country in abortion clinics and have that graphic embedded in your mind, because they were not put there by accident. If they were that important and that socially acceptable, they'd be next to City Hall or the library or whatever other meeting place there might happen to be, where the general public gets to recognize that as a place where people should be. I mean, put it right next to the hospital, or put it next to a monument, that people go past all the time. But no, you got to hide it inside of a poor neighborhood where you know that you're going to destroy lives. And you can't tell me that's not demonic behavior. And this is prevalent in our society. And it's interesting that you are having this conversation on this weekend, because September 21st is the feast of St. Matthew in the Catholic Church.
That is correct.
Saint Matthew, the archangel, and there's a short prayer to Saint Matthew, the archangel.
No, it's Saint Michael the Archangel, and his feast day is September 29th. It's okay. It's all good.
Saint Michael.
And actually, Saint Michael is mentioned in the Torah and in the Quran. He is the only one of our saints that is in all three.
Saint Michael, rather. And it Saint Michael is tasked with tasked with casting demons into hell along with Satan. And that prayer is read pretty much in most Catholic churches every week. But Saint Matthew was the recorder, and his Gospels are probably the most accurate. And I got to feel that if you're a Christian, that what you said, Aaron, as far as what it boils down to, the core teachings of what it boils down to for Judaism is the same thing. Yeah, it's not lost in translation there.
Yeah, because that was actually kind of my point when I said that Jesus was a Pharisee. My point was that you see the message of Jesus saying that you should love your neighbor as thyself. You should have more unity with one another. My point of that was to make that, you know, where he takes that from. Of course, God and all, because Jesus, according to Christianity, is God, fine. But you know that is something that he has been taught by Rabbi Hillel the Elder, who said that literal thing, that the entirety of Judaism basically boils down to the golden rule. Everything else is commentary. So that is the point to make, that Jesus took that. I mean, besides the point that he's God, he took that from his rabbi, who was also a Pharisee. So that was the point to make. The connection between Jesus and the Pharisees. He was a Pharisee. He grew up with them. Everything in his early life only points to that he was a Pharisee. He couldn't have been a Sadducee. He couldn't have been one of the other cults of influence at the time that were running around. He couldn't have been a Samaritan. He couldn't have been any of the others. He had to be a Pharisee. So that more or less that's why I made that connection. Everything, literally everything only points to the conclusion that Jesus was a Pharisee. Paul himself, I know I've said this multiple times. Paul himself said multiple times, he's a Pharisee's Pharisee. He's a Pharisee. Why do I need to know that Paul is a Pharisee? Why try to make that point? Because Pharisaism was the gold standard of Judaism. If you wanted to claim to have any status, or to say that you have any credibility whatsoever to talk about Judaism, you had to be a Pharisee. You couldn't have been a Sadducee. Sadducees were a joke. They were basically following the written Torah without the oral Torah. They were the upper crust elite, and they had little influence. They had maybe 5 or 7 seats in the Sanhedrin. They basically didn't have any influence in the Sanhedrin, 5 or 7 seats. The vast majority were either from the party of Rabbi Hillel, who was the grand rabbi, or of Shammai, who was the opponent of Hillel, who always sparred with Hillel, but they were good friends, but they were always sparring on what is the spirit of the law, what is the law, what is it trying to explain. So far that Hillel, as I said that everything else is commentary. Everything else is commentary, but the golden rule is the whole point of the law in Judaism. Shammai had the same person walk to him and ask him, how can you teach me the entire Torah on one foot? And he answered, that is impossible, because it's so complex and so deep and so amazing that it is impossible to teach you. So Shammai had a completely different way of dealing with the spirit of the law, of understanding the Torah. Here's another story, and you guys are gonna like this because this is very interesting. So you have a person asking a question from Shammai. Asked him, Rabbi, is it okay to lie, to say a white lie to a bride on her wedding day that she looks beautiful when in reality she's actually ugly? Can I lie to a bride? Tell her that she's beautiful. She's actually ugly. Is it okay to lie? You don't want to hurt her feelings. Can I do that? Shammai said, no, you can't lie, because even a white lie is obfuscating the truth. The truth is the most important thing. It is still a sin. You may not lie. Then that person went to Hillel and asked the same question. Am I allowed to lie to a bride to say that she looks beautiful on her wedding day when she's actually ugly? Hillel answered, you cannot lie, because every bride looks beautiful on her wedding day. These are two completely different answers with deep truth in them. You gotta love the difference between the philosophy of the two rabbis. Both rabbis are correct. Both rabbis' philosophy is deeply rooted in the tradition of Judaism. It's so correct, but both give so vastly different answers. You just gotta love the way these two thought. One, you're not allowed to lie. The other person said, no, you can't lie, because it's the truth. Every bride looks beautiful on their wedding day. That is one hell of an answer. I love that. That is so good. And the more people think if the more people were to think like this and this kind of attitude given towards the Torah, I do believe that more people would be good people. Now, I would like to address your point. You brought up an excellent point, and what we have already discussed here, that the people in Hollywood, the people in the top elite upper echelons of society who are trying to manipulate our way of thinking, are they possessed by demons? I would say that most of them are not, because there has to be freedom of choice, there has to be freedom of will. If they're possessed by demons, then there's no free will, because the demon literally has taken control of them. But I do believe that that it is definitely influenced by demons. Now, as we said, demons are not necessarily evil, but they are inherently destructive according to Judaism. In Christianity, they are necessarily evil. So, but more or less, we are more or less, that's a little bit more of semantics. We're both more or less talking the same, we're both using the same words to describe the same kind of thing. That yes, they are destructive. They're seeking the destruction of humanity. One, either be it evil or because it is within their nature. Who cares? They want to destroy us. We have to stand against it. All the time, everywhere. So yes, they definitely are in Hollywood. They're definitely in the UN and other places. They're just seeking war, and they are motivated just to destroy human beings. Some of them are just human beings as a whole. Humanity sometimes is evil because we have a capacity to do evil, but a lot of it definitely is possessed, and is definitely a lot of it is influenced by demonic forces. All right, let's go to WTF. Go ahead.
Hey, man, real quick. So I kind of just jumped in at, like 20 seconds ago, but I heard you say that a lot of the people in Hollywood aren't possessed, or I guess that they're not possessed because they're using free will.
Yes, they are evil people. Listen, there are evil people that exist, but that doesn't mean that literally all of them are possessed by demons. They are evil people, period. evil people exist. That's all my point. My point is just that not everybody that does evil is possessed by a demon. A lot of the people are just plain evil people that need to be, that either were not brought up right, or they need to be punished appropriately. As such, are some are pedophiles, some are rapists, some are murderers. They need to be punished, but that doesn't mean that they're all possessed by demons. They're just evil.
Well, let me ask you this:
Go ahead.
Don't you have to have don't you have to let demons in using your free will though?
Not necessarily. I do not believe that, as there is no proof for only that being the case. As there was this one woman that Jesus had to exorcise the demon out of her and sent it over to a flock of sheep. That I don't think that the New Testament makes any point of the demons, that demon asking for permission of the woman. Hey, can I enter you? It seems as though the demon didn't ask; it just did what it had to do. Because in a way, demons do also have freedom of will. They have some amount of intellect. They do understand concepts of living. They understand that they are alive. They understand that they have these powers, but nonetheless, they not necessarily have to ask your permission. Maybe some can tell you, hey, I can give you riches. I just need to control your body, and I can give you all the riches, all the glory, fame, love, and respect that you want. You just need to, let's do a deal with the devil. I guess there's some demons that definitely have that power. But do they have to ask you? No, I don't believe that to be the case.
So what if they take control of your body by tricking you into giving them consent to, but you don't realize you're giving them consent to do so? You know,
how would they? So how would they do that?
I don't know. They ask you a question, or they ask you to consent to something you don't fully understand, and then next thing you know, you're taken over. I mean, I'm not a demonologist, man, but everything that I've read kind of states that they can't just take you over. You have to be in a weakened state, and then you have to, I guess, consent to them taking over your body. That's my understanding of it.
If you're covered by the blood of Jesus, you got nothing to worry about. Ain't no demon getting in me. Ain't no demon getting next to me. They can stay over there. They don't have permission. Okay, so ask being oh, well, a demon has to ask your permission to get into your body. Well, if you're drinking, if you're doing things that would open that gateway, yeah, they can go right into you. But if you're covered in the blood of Jesus, ain't no demon getting inside of you. So maybe you need to find Jesus.
Here's a good answer to your question. I guess that the best way of explaining it would be that a demon needs to find a low-quality human being, and that means, morally speaking, that human being is already seeped in either all kinds of profanity, degeneracy, so on and so forth. That is how they access. If you're dealing with a high-quality human being, morally speaking, somebody who fears God, the demon will have no influence. He may try to, but he will fail every single time, because that person is too moral and too holy for a demon to enter. If we're dealing with somebody who is either pagan or idol worshiper or a degenerate person, then that person definitely could be possessed by a demon, willingly or unwillingly. So I guess that is the best way of answering that question. Does that give you is that a fair answer?
Yeah, I'm tracking, man. I appreciate it.
Well, that's great. We're happy to have. If there's anybody else up here who wants to ask some questions on demons or of that sort, I'm willing to give you a Jewish perspective, a Christian perspective.
Well, real quick, I do have one other
yes,
question.
Go ahead.
Because you're really well versed in this. So Adam and Eve had two sons, right?
Right.
Cain and Abel. And so Adam
Actually, they had three. Seth. Don't forget about Seth.
All right. Well, whatever. They're all male. That's the point. So,
Chris, how could you forget about Seth? I mean, honestly, he's so offended.
So if Adam and Eve were the first two and had all three male sons, I think the question's obvious. How did humanity become humanity?
I had to answer this one for a teenager, and it was quite awkward. Okay, well, God created Adam and Eve, obviously. Why did he just stop at Adam and Eve? Like, wouldn't he have populated the world at that point?
Well, damn. There is certain argument here that could be made about this. One of which is in the reading, depending on how you're reading the Bereshit, which is Bereshit in English, or Genesis. Like Bereshit is the Hebrew word, and Bereshit is the Anglophile version of the Hebrew word. Genesis is the literal English word. Okay, so in Bereshit, I guess what you could say is, if the way you read it, there are multiple ways of reading it. One is that they were the only people that existed. That is one way of reading it. And then there's another way of reading it, saying that God created more people, but they were the first. Then God created more people and cast them into the world where those people already existed. God sent them down and sent them down because of original sin. So it's not that they are the only ones, it's that there were also people afterward that were not necessarily the children of Adam and Eve. There's a way of reading it. I don't remember exactly how you read into it. Because I don't remember the exact words, but there is like an argument to be made that is what's going on there. I'm not saying that is what's going on. I'm saying that is one argument that could be considered. Then and the other one could be that maybe God, again, maybe this is just not necessary to the story, that God created more partners for them in order to procreate.
Because we had a whole bunch of people in the world, and then we got to Noah, and then that kind of got scrunched down again. So
maybe God created more people. I mean, it doesn't seem that these things don't seem to be necessary for the story to answer. That's what it seems to be the case. Listen, I'm sure that I'm giving you a quick answer that I haven't really looked into that much.
I'm not trying to be different.
I know. Listen, you ask the question, I answered. That's the best of my ability how I answer the question. If I really wanted to, I could just sit down right now, open up a Hebrew Bible, and start reading, and then start to explain the things. I'm just giving you, quick off the top of my head, a way of giving you a quick, maybe even an insufficient answer, but nonetheless, an answer nonetheless. All right. I know, Joseph, I know you want to talk. Raise your hand. I will allow you to talk. First, I want to go to interlocutor because they had their hand up. Pick up your hand, and I will let you say your piece.
Hi, I wanted to respond to the gentleman. It's my understanding that not everything that occurred is listed in the Bible. And in certain cases, only certain people, certain offspring were mentioned, and certain people who are created or who existed were mentioned, because not everything and everyone can be included. So there were other unrelated people existing, but the Bible listed 3 people in particular because they had an important role to play in what God decided needed to be put in the Bible. So it's important to read the Bible, exactly what it says, but then also understand context. It does say in the Word that not everything is written. It's not possible that everything is written. But there are other, I'm not going to say writings, there's other evidence for circumstances that don't seem obvious upon the first read. And then I do need to make a correction to the host, only because when we talk about the Word of God, it has to be accurate. When you reference the demons being sent out of a person, it was not a flock of sheep, it was a flock of swine. And it is important because that was a specific unholy animal. And then they ran off the cliff and died. Now, sheep were considered kosher. They were used for sacrifice, and they were allowed to be eaten. And so there is an important distinction to be made when we explain the demons and why they were sent into the swine. And I'm sorry that I had to insert a correction. It is.
Listen, I thank you for the correction. I want to be as accurate as possible. That is an excellent correction. Thank you very much for that. All right, let's go to Joseph.
Yeah. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
No, I was just going to say that in Genesis chapter 5, verse 4, it does say that Adam lived to 800 and that basically he had sons and daughters. So he didn't just have sons, he had daughters as well. So that's basically obviously how the bloodline continued. Going back to that point of how they populated the earth. And yeah, that's basically how it happened.
But here's the problem with that line of argument, because then that would be incest, and incest is a sin. So that creates another problem for how would God allow something like this to happen?
Because
was incest a sin then?
It doesn't really matter. Does it really make any sense for God to think that, okay, now it's going to be a sin, later it's not going to be a sin? It doesn't really matter. The point is God is going to make a world where suddenly incest isn't a sin. It just doesn't really compute. So there has to be an alternative. I don't really know the exact alternative, but there is definitely an alternative, maybe which the Bible doesn't. It says that it's not really important. The point is, that is not the point. We're trying to make points on either human nature or telling stories on important lessons. The way the humans continue to populate doesn't really matter, because this is not a history book, although it definitely has some history. This is not a history book. This is a moral book. Completely different things. This is not a scientific book. This is a moral book meant for a specific purpose, and doesn't really matter how people continue to procreate. Although I'm sure if you really look close enough at the words, I'm sure you can find it there if you really look into either Apocrypha or all other places.
Yeah, but you got to also remember that at that time it was quite fresh that they got thrown out of the Garden of Eden. So basically, incest wasn't really a thing. It didn't exist. Like, they were closer to perfection, being thrown out of literally the Garden of Eden, and then Adam and Eve having sons and daughters, and incest didn't actually exist back then. So it's as we got further away from the Garden of Eden, and more like, if you look at the story of Nimrod, where God confused the languages and all that, that was further away from the Garden of Eden, and so other nationalities and things like that came into existence when he confused the languages. And so what I'm trying to say is that I don't think incest existed like when he first created Adam and Eve. You know what I mean?
Well, that's one perspective. I don't think it's completely justifiable to make that argument. Maybe somebody could convince me of that. I hear what you're saying. I'm just saying that I'm pretty sure there's a better argument to be made on that front. I'm sure there must be something better than incest didn't exist back then. So, but to be fair, listen, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. Listen, I hear what you're saying. Jen, you held up your hand. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, I think, like, yes, talking about all of this stuff in context of, like, what happened in the Bible is, obviously, you can do that. But I think, like, the bottom line here is the answer is Jesus, and you need to be saved by the blood of Jesus in order to, get into heaven. And I would argue to get through your daily life. Like, as long as you have Jesus, none of this other stuff can touch you. So I just want to, like, put that out there.
Well,
and I know you don't believe that, Aaron, but I'm just saying.
No, listen. When you say Jesus, I want to make this very clear. When you say Jesus, me as a Jew, of course I don't believe in that per se, but I do believe in the concept of, you say believe in Jesus, that is God. What I would translate to, you just need to believe in God. So it's your concept of what you're saying, I agree with wholeheartedly. The specific person you're talking about, I disagree with. But the concept, you need to believe in God. That is a good rule to live by. You need to live by the 10 Commandments. Good concept to live by. You need to live by the Golden Rule. Good concept to live by. So
you have to accept Jesus into your heart and ask for your sins to be given and ask to go to heaven. Like you have, like in my religion, Aaron, like in order to get into heaven, you have to ask Jesus Christ of Nazareth to forgive you of your sins. That's what I believe.
Yes, this is not only the mainstream. This is the only Christian view. If you don't believe in Jesus, like you're not a Christian. Like duh. There's not too much. There's not too much to be argued on that point. But as a Jew, when I hear that, I'm not going to say no. Well, actually, I'm not going to say no. I'm going to say that is good for you as a Christian. But me as a Jew, what I hear is you didn't need to believe in God, and I would rather have somebody believe in God, period, than not believe in God, even if it takes them steps. If they either go with the God of the Jews or they go with the God of the Christians, and that is Jesus. They include Jesus into the equation. Fine, fair
They're
enough.
the same God, Aaron.
Again, they are the same God in respects to either the Father or the Spirit, whatever. But when you include Jesus, now you've added something to the equation. If you want to include Jesus into the equation, fine, fair enough. I'd rather have you believe in Jesus than be a hedonistic, I don't know, a hedonistic person that just exists for the sake of existing. I want you to serve something higher than yourself. So if you want to include Jesus into the equation, go ahead. You want to exclude him and just believe in the Father or the Spirit, go ahead, do that. Just believe in God. That is like, I just want people to believe in God. Okay, let's go to Torelli. Go ahead.
Hey Aaron, how are you? Happy Sunday, everybody. Let's talk about demons. Hey Jen and Kim and everyone else. Guys, share the room, share the space. In the purple pill, I wanted to ask a question. Here I am at softball practice with my kids, and as a kid, I would see these small little entities, right? They appear to be French fried people with legs. They will walk, and I would be afraid. I think as a kid, you see things like demons and evil spirits, and they come in different forms. I was just wondering, and it was reoccurring like all the time. So I know I wasn't dreaming as a kid. Here I am, a grown adult. I can still remember that at like 4 and 5 years old. What was that like? What were the images and things that I would see when I was young? Were those demons? And they made me feel very uncomfortable. So I think it's a lot to talk about. Some of us have dreams and visions of dark places, and the things we see are those demons, and they reoccur. And the last thing I wanted to bring out are the watchers, the angels that were cast down from heaven here on earth and did a lot of things with the human people here too as well. Being that they were cast down, were they demons? So it's so much to talk about. I'm here for Aaron. Let me go ahead and follow all of the beautiful people up here. But the dreams, number one for me, I saw a lot when I was little. Couldn't shake it. I was so frightened. I pissed the bed. Like, I was a bed peer for a very long time. I know it's funny, but it's honest. That's how afraid I was of these little things. I would see as a kid, and kids see things. They see things that adults and other people with different levels of their spirituality, they can't see it. So all I wanted to say is that it's a lot. I need time to unravel it all, but thank you guys for having me up here. And let me follow Aaron.
Well, about your point that you saw certain things that might be demons, this is the general view of Judaism. I'm not discounting your story. I'm just giving you the Jewish perspective on this. That demons generally do not reside within. Again, generally speaking, they do not reside within around humans. They reside in places that either there are no humans, like Amazon rainforest, just jungles and whatever, because they've been cast away, because they have no right to be around humans. They've caused so much havoc, so much trouble that they were cast aside. Okay, but I would definitely have to agree with you that not all demons have been cast outside of human cities or where humans live. Some of them reside in places like Hollywood, places like the upper echelons of society, where they're ultra hedonistic people who exist just for pleasure's sake. They are nasty, evil people. They seek to start wars. They seek to do all these terrible things. Definitely, demons do find themselves to that in these places they could easily possess a human being because they are of so low moral character. So this is more of a Jewish perspective on it, but yeah, definitely, definitely sometimes the demons, they come out and they make themselves known, and it needs to they need to be exorcised out of society because they are destructive forces of evil. Let's go to Joe Every.
Hey, my man. Listen, I hope everyone's well this evening. Listen, there's a lot of problems facing the world, facing Americans, facing everybody. I mean, even more problems than I think ever existed on Earth. We got this social media now. To me, social media is a demon. I'm 33 years old. I don't have any kids, but I mean, I should have had a couple, but you know, that's beside the point. But this social media is absolutely tearing up families, tearing up kids, bullying. I mean, bullying's through the roof, and that's not even the start of it. Okay, fake news, everything. Now, the problem with demons is you can see them. I've seen demons my whole life, but they're right out in the public now. They're out every day. I mean, it's almost embarrassing. The politicians, we know who they are. They're absolute demons. They hate us. They hate us. Us is everybody. They don't care if you're a liberal, if you're a conservative, if you support Donald Trump. They could care less. They hate you, and that's the bottom line. Now, um, there's a reason why they call him the Antichrist. The liberals call him the Antichrist. I'm not to get into politics, but that's why they call Donald Trump the Antichrist, because they hate the guy because he's messing up everything that they had going for him for the last 40 years. He's trying to mess it up. And if he does that, he's for the people, in my opinion. But anyway, I live in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania is going to go way for Trump. It's going to be an absolute disgrace. On November 5th, you're going to see. I honestly, I know I don't know if we're getting to politics, but I'll cut it short by saying it's going to be an embarrassment on November 5th. Donald Trump might win. I think he's going to win about 42, 43 states. It's going to be. I got a call there. My fault. But anyway, yeah, Jesus Christ is the Son of God, and when you see demons, just get down on your hands and knees because Jesus Christ has you. And if you're Jewish too, or you're a Muslim, I mean, I'm not a big fan of Muslims. I'll be honest with you, but if you're a Muslim or Jewish, whatever, get down on your hands and knees and pray to Jesus Christ, the Son of God. I know this is a Jewish space. I'm sorry. But
no, it's not Jewish space. Everybody's Christian.
Okay. I didn't know that. Yeah, I'm a Christian. I'm not a Catholic. I'm a Protestant. So yeah, but I was going to tell a story. I'll keep it 20 seconds. There was this little 5'10" little clown. I was playing poker with him 2 days ago, right? And I'm a foot taller than the guy. He was trying to get me, I guess, riled up at the poker table. You know what I mean? He goes, Donald Trump hates the veterans. He hates an active service military too. And I say, why do you say that? And he goes, because that's what one of the military, General Milley came on CNN and said that. I said, for one, General Milley is paid off by the Democratic Party easily. Ask 99% of the military and the veterans who they're voting for. They'll tell you right away, Donald Trump. So the guy, and he didn't want to reply to this. This is the problem we have, that the media is these people will never wake up, certain people. But yeah, thanks for having me on, man. I hope everyone's doing well tonight and today and everything, because this world is getting out of control. And keep your mental capacities with you, because we need it. So thanks, man.
We definitely do need a Trump victory, because only then we can also not only start with the draining of the swamp. The swamp is also.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate you. I don't know where the hosts and co-hosts are.
Can't hear
so
you.
I'll just run it. Hey, Aaron. Oh, never mind. I'll drop down.
Yeah. So the start of this, after Trump wins, we're gonna start with the draining of the swamp, and that also includes spiritually. We need to drain the swamp of these degenerate heathens who are trying to do all the destructive things against.
Hey, I'm going to drop down as listener. Let somebody come up. Yes. We got a lot of great people on this space, so thanks, man.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, we have.
I'm going to follow you too, by the way. Great space.
Awesome. Okay, I want to, before I go to the hand, somebody asked here a question. Tony asked a question. Wait a minute. No. Who asked the question here? Not Tony, somebody else here. Somebody asked the question, how do Jews now, since the destruction of the temple, how do Jews pray or serve God? Well, very simple, by prayer. And this also goes into a question that, how does that even work out? It's a very simple equation. For the vast majority of Jewish history, the Jews did not have a temple. And that goes back to the first destruction of the first temple. Jews did also not have a temple neither in Babylon, Persia, or otherwise. So after the destruction of the second temple, of the first temple, what did Jews do? Well, they prayed. They stick to the oral and written Torah. They prayed a lot. That is how they served God. So one of the ways of asking for forgiveness is on Yom Kippur, when you ask for forgiveness of God for all your sins. So there's not too much it's not too hard to understand. Jews do not have a temple nowadays, but we do pray to God. That is basically how we ask for forgiveness. And yeah, that's more or less on that. Okay, so I'm gonna have to decide on who I'm gonna allow. Okay, let's go. Adam, I know that I think you were first. I'm not sure, but I'm gonna go to you after. Okay, I want to go to, because we talk a lot. I want to hear from new perspectives, from new people. Okay, so Cosmic Johnson, go ahead.
Yeah, guys. So basically, I wanted to give a more definition of what demon is from an Islamic perspective. So we call demons the jinns. I guess Western people, they call them like genies, and we say that they live with us, they live among us, but they live in another dimension of reality. So if you consider to be our reality to be one TV station, then the demons or the jinns live on another TV station. So they live in the same space but on a different frequency. And all these jinns, what they do is, many of them are just like human beings, as in they have their own consciousness and their own free will. And some of them, though, decide to communicate with human beings, and what it do is they whisper to us, basically. So every time we have bad thoughts, part of that isn't just down to the fact that you're having a bad thought or an evil thought, or if you're jealous, or if you have some kind of negative thought, like say if your friend says to you, "Oh, my girlfriend has just got a really amazing job and now she's now earning $100,000." Some people may get a little bit jealous of that. So what we say is that part of that jealousy comes from a demon whispering to you, trying to make you have evil thoughts, and then trying to make you ultimately do something evil, basically, like, I don't know, jeopardize her new job or something like that. So yeah, we believe that demons do exist, and they are with us all the time. And they're just, the only reason why we can't see them is because they are on another frequency level, just like, again, another TV station. So we are, say, channel CNN, and then they would be on channel CBNC, for example. Hope that makes sense. Okay, thank you for listening.
That is definitely an interesting perspective. I didn't think of it that way. That is interesting. My understanding of it was that demons are more spiritual than physical, and that's why they need something that contains them. Otherwise, their spirit starts leaking out. So they need something that contains them. And humans are more physical than spiritual. We have a soul, but the soul is something that in part does control us, because we are our soul, but also we are the body. The body is also a very important part of the aspect. So we're more or less more of a body than a soul, only except when we die, the soul is the one that gets judged, not the body. But nonetheless, you're saying something pretty similar to what I'm saying, but not exactly. And I think that your perspective is very interesting on that part. Let's see here. Who do I want to go next to? Okay, first, before I go next to, I just want to. Sorry, Tony here said a comment. The Jews worship Satan. That is their god. Tony, you really need to start looking into Judaism if you really believe that is what's going on here, because I mean, I don't know where you're taking that from. I really do need to know where you're taking that from, because all my entire life, I'm an ultra-Orthodox Jew. My entire life, I've been told to beware of Satan, always stay away from whatever he has to say because he's evil.
You're told
Or-
to worship him.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've never been told that. I can fact check right now. No, that is not true. So whatever. Let's go. I want to go before I go to the next hand. I want to address also the questions here. So the next question is: but without the high priest, how is it possible? Leviticus 16:21, the priest confessed the sins of the people. Yes, about that. That is in the case of if you have the not if when you have the either the what's it called, the Mishkan, that is the before the temple there was the Mishkan, the portable temple in the when the Jews were in the desert. So when you have that, or when you have the actual physical temple, that's when you confess. You have the high priest that actually does the sacrificing of goats, lambs, and oxen, all the other things. Then goes into the Holy of Holies, prostrates himself, and asks for God for his forgiveness. That is how it was done in the days of the temple. Since there is no temple, there's no way of doing so. Furthermore, there is a prohibition on Jews actually doing sacrifices, because now it would be akin to idol worship. You cannot sacrifice, not even to God, because you do not have the necessary mental mind or tools in order to sacrifice anything to God, because there is no temple. You have to be in a completely different state of being. It's not just, oh, we're going to sacrifice a lamb to God, and this is going to signify the forgiving of my sins. You can't just do that. That needs, the tabernacle interlocutor posted here. Thank you for that. So you cannot just sacrifice anything to God and be like, oh, okay, well, I sacrificed to God. I'm like the high priest. No, you can't do that. You have to have the temple. It has to be done in a structured, orderly way. And there has been a prohibition of that ever since. I think even in the first temple, there was a prohibition put on that because the upper tribes, that is the 10 tribes, you had Judah, and then you had the 10 tribes on upper Israel. They started worshiping by making their own places of killing the animal, of sacrificing, and then they started worshiping idols, because that's how powerful this is. The moment you start to sacrifice animals, that's when you could get into idol worship real fast, real quick, and it's very dangerous. So what Israel did, I mean, that is Judah, the kingdom of Judah. What they did was say that no, you can't actually just sacrifice. It doesn't work like that. It has to be done a specific way. It has to be in the temple, and that's where that prohibition comes from. So nowadays, you can't do any of that. Because you can't do any of that, now prayer is the only way of asking for God for forgiveness. And basically, it's not like, I just want to make sure that you guys understand. It's not like only on Yom Kippur we ask for forgiveness. We ask for forgiveness every day. On Yom Kippur, we make sure that we actually did ask for forgiveness, because people might forget to ask for forgiveness just on any regular day. So on Yom Kippur, we're heading into the new year. We're asking for a clean slate. That is the day that we make sure that we are pure of thought. We ask for actual forgiveness, not only of our neighbors, of ourselves, and of God. So we can't sacrifice anything. We can't use the scapegoat, the one that is sent to Lazuzel to die, the two goats. We can't do that. What we can do is only ask for forgiveness by praying. That's basically what is done on Yom Kippur. Okay, let's go to Adam.
Thank you, Aaron. Thanks for having me in the space. Space is great as usual. Interesting conversation as usual. Like you were saying that the demons, live in these rainforests, unless they're called upon, right, by some of these powerful echelon people. I was gonna say they call upon them, so maybe that's where they go. The gentleman was talking about jinn, and this is something, I have a Muslim Christian upbringing sort of deal here with me. I'm a hybrid, but in that regard, but I'm not religious. So as far as jinn, but I've heard the stories. This is from Got Questions, which is Biblical Answers, and their answer is for the question, what are jinn? Jinn, singular, genie, also spelled Dginni or genie, is an Arabic word that literally means to hide. Jinn are supernatural creatures found in Islamic and Arabic writings, particularly Quran. Quran says that jinn were created from a smokeless and scorching fire. separately from humans or angels. However, they can appear in human or animal form to interact with people. From the word jinn, we get our English word genie, defined as a spirit in human form who grants wishes. According to the Quran, jinn will be judged the same as human beings and will be sent to either paradise or hell according to their deeds on earth. Jinn are often considered Islamic equivalent of demons. However, they are more complex than that. Muslims do believe that angels can sin, although Scripture indicates they can. Isaiah 14:12 through 15, Luke 10:18, 2 Peter 2:4. Muslims believe that Satan, Shaitan, was a genie, not an angel named Lucifer in Isaiah 14:12, who refused to obey God and was cast from heaven. In Islam, jinn are a different kind of spirit creature that can do evil by rejecting Islam or doing good by accepting Islam. They have free will just as humans do, and also oppress or possess human beings, animals, and objects. They have social order that includes celebrating weddings, honoring kings, practicing religion. Interesting stuff. The idea of, I'm almost done with reading through this here. The idea of jinn has been snatched from the world of ancient religious writings and spun into the world of fantasy. The websites abounding that claim to help people understand jinn. Many of these explanations sound more like characters in a video game with instructions about how to contact jinn or derive personal benefit from them, depending on whom you ask. There can be 3 to 5 different categories of jinn. Merid, the strongest, most powerful jinn. Ifrit, sounds Egyptian almost. Enormous winged creature of fire, either male or female, who live underground and inhabits ruins. Shaitan, Satan, I guess, Shaitan sort of thing. The evil jinn, akin to demons in Christianity and Islam. In Islam, these jinn choose to be non-Muslim. Ghoul, the creepiest type of jinn. Bloodsuckers inhabit graveyards and lonely places. Jan, serpent-like, primitive, and considered the father of jinn. I'm going to go into from a biblical perspective, the idea of jinn could be an attempt to identify the many unseen creatures that inhabit the heavenly realms. 2 Corinthians 10:3 through 4, and Ephesians 6:12. We know that the spiritual realm is real, but we possess little information about it. The Bible does not mention jinn at all, but it does expressly mention angels and Hebrews 1:14 and demons, Luke 4:41. Living creatures, Revelations 4:6 through 9. Seraphim, Isaiah 6:2, and cherubim, Ezekiel 10:9 through 6:17. There could be countless other creations of God designed to worship and serve Him. Although they are not mentioned in Scripture, the existence of what the Quran and other ancient texts call jinn may have some validity, but perhaps not in the way those documents explain them. What we do know is that God's Word, containing everything God wants us to know about supernatural creatures, including angels and demons, 2 Peter 1:3 and 2 Timothy 3:16. If jinn do exist, we know the Quranic explanation of them is incorrect because it contradicts God's word, John 17:17, since jinn simply means hidden. Then the word could describe those unseen creatures that inhabit the spiritual realm. But we must always be careful to compare any speculation with what is revealed in God's word, and base any belief or conviction on that alone. So that was an interesting read that I found, and it's interesting that the gentleman brought up jinn earlier because that's something I've heard of. They're supposed to be different dimensional creatures, and they interact like with people. Like I hear it said that they possess beings as well, which could be like, people, and even in Christianity you see possessions happen, and people, priests, they call the priest, and the priest comes and he starts reading scripture over them to cast the demons away. So kind of interesting correlation there. That's why I personally always stayed away from Ouija boards and crap like that, or any sort of like, messing with these sort of like demons or creatures. I've heard stories of like people spinning spoons or something like that, like a Middle Eastern kind of thing.
Yeah, Adam. Yes.
So I stay away from that crap, man, completely. My dad told me stories about that, and he's like, I left right away. Like people spinning spoons, calling on demons. Like, nah, that ain't my steez.
Yeah, you guys gotta stay away from that, because there are definitely certain forces that you cannot see, hear, touch, or taste, but only when they want to make themselves known. That's when you know them. And when you start knowing them, you're like, oh crap, I should not have said 3 times Bloody Mary in the
Candyman.
Yeah, don't listen. Once you listen, for some people they're like, it's silly and all, but
I saw Tupac's hand go right up when I said Candyman.
Listen, you might just be triggering. You might just be triggering a demon, and I would not advise for that. Although with the Ouija board, that is mostly a scam. Although maybe sometimes may just be that demons are the ones responsible for it, but it's mostly a scam. Okay, let's go to. I want to go to the hands, and I'm gonna go first to the ones who haven't spoken yet. Then we're gonna go to the ones who have spoken already. So I apologize.
Where'd Tupac go? I wanted to hear from him, man.
Oh wait, he's requesting again. Okay, well,
nice.
Okay, let's go to numpty questions. Then we'll go to one witness. Then Joseph, and then no quarter. Okay, go ahead. Numpty questions.
Hey guys, I just wanted to say thanks. I'm new to these spaces. I think what you guys got going on is excellent. Just open conversation all the time. Doesn't seem to be any restrictions, and everybody's pretty open. I want to say that this is a super awesome experience to be involved in. I just kind of wanted to echo what Joe was saying earlier, that it's all of us they want. It's not, it's just disturbing. I hate talking about this sometimes. But not to get too deep into it, my real question is to you guys is, what's the main thing? What's the first thing that has to happen in order for us to move forward in this spiritual or religious space? What is holding us back, and what are the things like? And it could be a thing per religion, like for us. I just say because I'm in America or whatever, but for Christians, it could be the Vatican. Is the Vatican what's holding us back? Because they're a bunch of fucking scumbags, and they won't tell us what's in the vault, so we don't know really what's going on. Is there something on the Muslim side? Is there something on the Jewish side? Is there something on this? What has to be done in order to move forward? So, and kind of to your point, get rid of the demons, move all of this shit out of the way so we can get better. Thank you for everything. You guys are awesome. Love you.
That's an awesome question. Thank you for asking that question. Well, I will give you 2 answers to that. First of all, everybody needs to re-examine themselves. It always starts with the individual more than anybody else. You can point to whatever you want, but the problems. But the spiritual but the spiritual part of everybody is within your own life. That's the first answer.
Who said they couldn't hear the host, so we can drop it down?
I think
that was me, Kimberly.
Okay, let me drop you down and I'll bring you right back.
All right. And the next answer to that is degeneracy and hedonism. That is one of the core problems that I see that proliferates within the society. Degeneracy is talking about sexual degeneracy, and that is cutting off children's genitals. That is just plain old. Porn needs to be eradicated completely out of civil society and out of the society as a whole. Completely. The porn peddlers need to be punished. I don't care. I don't care whoever thinks that. No, it's a certain type of liberty. You need to be able to. No, you don't. No, you freaking don't. Find yourself a woman and have sex with a woman. Stop with this disgusting degeneracy. So the hedonistic degeneracy, I see that as being one of the worst things to be happening right now. And then these are the 2 answers: Hedonistic degeneracy, that is as a whole, of the whole society. That is big picture stuff. Small picture is everybody for themselves. They need to be able to live by the golden rule. Forgive yourself, forgive everybody else. You're nothing. You're an absolute speck of dust in the cosmos. You're nothing. Stop thinking of yourself as being so highly. You need God. You need God immediately, right now. You need Him yesterday. So,
porn is just a symptom, right? Porn is a symptom of.
It's not only a symptom; it is a cause. It is not only a symptom. It's more than it. It's a cycle. How about this? It's a cycle.
Chicken and egg.
One causes the other. It's a complete cycle, and it needs to stop immediately. So, big picture, and the degeneracy and the heathenism. Live for God, serve God. In the immediate, right now, for you yourself, live by the golden rule. Love your neighbor as thyself, and you just live for God. You serve for God, even if your neighbor isn't serving God. Big picture, you get your neighbor to. Small picture, you yourself do it. I think that's the fastest way of putting it down. All right, let's go to one witness. Excellent. Let's go
And
to
real quick, can I plug something? I'm gonna be doing a space. I'm planning on doing.
Okay, do it quick.
Okay, I'll do it quick. I'll be doing like, this is outside of American Mission. This is on my own. Like, I'm gonna be doing like a nighttime, like possibly weekly conspiracy kind of space. I'm gonna be covering. I'm gonna be playing Bill Cooper's Mystery Babylon, the Hour of the Time. I'll be doing that like once a week. I'll do like one episode. He goes through the dawn of man, son of God, Egyptian magic, Osiris and Isis. He goes through the New World Order and Freemasonry, Eugenism. He goes through the Rosicrucians. He goes through the Hashashins, the assassins from Persia, Gnosticism, all sorts of topics, sun worship, Lucifer worship, all these sort of occult people that I believe we are dealing with, whether you're Christian, Muslim, or just a believer of God and Jesus. There are evil people in this world, and I think these are the forces that want a one world religion. I like a little variety personally, but I don't like people at each other's necks over their differences and beliefs. If you believe in God, that's good for me. If you believe in Jesus, I love that too. Because that's how I've personally accepted it in my life. That we do sin, and having a person that gave their life for our sin and went through a lot of suffering for our sin as a son of God, in my personal opinion, makes sense to me, and it rings true to my heart. But yeah, I think regardless, we're all children of Abraham, and as long as, I think, if you're godly and holy and believe in the 10 Commandments, live by them, and do no ill will to others.
Adam, wrap it up.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Come on, man. All right, fine. I was wrapping it up, but yeah. I think, that's pretty much it. Thanks, Aaron.
Yes, if you like conspiracy theories, you should definitely listen to Adam's Space. Okay, let's go. One witness. Go ahead.
History, conspiracy history.
Go ahead, one witness. You've been called to testify.
Yes. Thank you kindly. Great space. There's a real need for it. I wanted to say that some of the best testimony regarding understanding the spiritual realm is found in the Enochic writings. And we find in no uncertain terms that the evil spirits, which would later be referred to as demons, are the spirits of the dead giants. In fact, where the nations are now being gathered to Mount Hermon at the 33rd parallel, is where the son of David gave a speech there at a place called Caesarea Philippi. And he said in no uncertain terms that the gates of Sheol would not prevail, indeed the grave, which included with it the binding place of the fallen angels, or the messengers, the lower tier of them, called the Watchers. In fact, one of them was named Azazel. That's where the later basis for the scapegoat and Judaism came from, and in that order, I might add. And that being was bound in the heart of the earth under rocks and whatnot for a time that would be yet future from Enoch's time. This is alluded to, albeit in the parenthetical, abridged, and heavily redacted creation account that is in most of our canonical sources. It's also good to know that Genesis 1 and 2 are not chronological, but rather are parenthetical. And so now that we have better information which fill in the gaps found in the Dead Sea Scrolls and things of that nature, we can understand the spirit realm a little bit more clearly. Now, again, succinctly, when the watchers descended to Mount Hermon and saw that the daughters of men were fair, they produced the Nephilah, which in the Aramaic is the giants or mongrels or monsters. And that when those beings passed, the byproduct, that is, of this unholy union, the spirits that were within the giants themselves, because they were neither wholly earthly nor wholly heavenly, they would be wandering spirits, and it states that they would be called evil spirits upon the earth. That is a demon. And not to be confused with a fallen angel. For instance, the ones that are in the upper tier, in what Enoch described as the fifth heaven, which is the planetary realm. And even in the good writings in the book of Jude prior to Revelation, we have the erratic teachers of the day compared to wandering stars. That's the reference to the planets, for whom darkness is reserved forever. And that is, of course, playing on the good testimony of Enoch as it states in the book itself. But I did want to say that as it pertains to the son of David, some of the best writings that will clear up the fog of Judaism, Islam, and Christianity as it pertains to a Messiah, as it pertains to a high priest now functioning, having been seated at the right hand of power. We find that in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were and indeed are preserved quite well as it pertains to this eternal order of Melchizedek, and that prior to the order of Aaron, indeed the former being greater than the latter. So if you all will recall, perhaps, in the book of Jubilees, Isaac he laid his hand, his left hand, if you will, on Jacob's son, who was, of course, Judah. But before that, he did that for the kingship. But before that, he laid his right hand on Levi, or Levi, for a priesthood. And so those offices find themselves in one new man, raised up according to the eternal covenant of peace, and indeed seated at the right hand of power. So knowing that Christian myth and mythos within Islam certainly, and far worse, have confused the issue to some degree, we do have the good testimony in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which bring us granular clarity regarding the matter. But I wanted to say thank you, Aaron, for being willing to talk about these topics. The realms are merging. We even find in Second Esdras that alongside the good words of the son of David, whereas we will see wars and rumors of wars, famines and plagues and diseases and nation arising against nation, it adds the phrase realm against realm. Very, very important there, because the realms are indeed merging. That is, the sons of darkness on earth allied with the forces of Belial or Belial, later referred to as Satan and his messengers in Christian tradition, to indeed remove the name of Zion, remove the name of Israel, that it be remembered no more. And indeed, with one mind, a hive mind, even as locusts having no leader, yet traveling in swarms and devouring much, they do scurry this very day to remove the thing that the Father indeed has established, and that according to an eternal covenant, like he did in and through David and in and through Levi, with an eternal priesthood and an eternal king, like that of the sun and the moon and the stars, even the covenant he made with day and night. Indeed, heaven and earth do testify this very day, as the nations are being gathered to Mount Hermon, the 33rd parallel, where they will indeed be crushed. And that is the place where that man gave the speech at the base of Mount Hermon, stating in no uncertain terms that the forces of darkness would not prevail. Now, the 33rd parallel runs through Roswell, New Mexico, too. So I'm hoping that this helps you see the connection between not only the earthly nation against nation and kingdom against kingdom, but also the realm against realm. So when we see the heavens shake and the earth shake, we don't have to be afraid. The Father sends us prophets to clear up the confusion that is often sown into religious discourse in the form of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, each of which have some elements of truth. But the further away you get away from the root, that is the beginning, when our Father in heaven established that which is good, the more convoluted and confused things go and get. I did want to say thank you in closing to Adam for that brief parenthetical pause at the end, where you rightly discerned that Islamic eschatology, as it pertains to demonology, was and in fact is deep deception. Anyway, keep your eyes on the golden heights, and it will be lighting up, to be clear. The realms will merge shortly thereafter, and men's hearts will fail them for what is coming upon the earth, to be sure. Bless you all this day. Let not your heart be troubled.
Well, thank you for that. That was a good speech. I like that. That is interesting. Highly entertaining. That's good. I like it. Thank you. Okay, let's go to Game of Thrones, because I know I told that I'm going to go to Joseph and no quarter, but I always go to first who hasn't spoken.
Sorry, I cannot
So
even
Game of Thrones, can you hear me? Can Game of Thrones hear me? I know Game of Thrones has been having trouble. Game of Thrones, okay. I'm gonna kick him off, bring him back on. I hope this time it works. I know he's been kicked off and brought back on multiple times, but I don't know. There must be some kind of glitch, either from his side or the space. I don't think it's the space. The space has been pretty consistent. But let's see. I'm bringing him back on right now. Add him on as a speaker. Okay, Game of Thrones. Can you hear me now? It doesn't seem. Game of Thrones. Can you hear me? It doesn't seem like he'll be able to hear me. Okay, go ahead, Joseph Locks.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about a point earlier when we was talking about the sacrifices in the temple, and basically what I gathered from what you was talking about is how I see it is that the sacrifices that went on when they were sacrificing an animal to atone for the sins, it was only, I believe personally that it was only ever meant to be a temporary sacrifice for the sins of the nation of Israel. I think, God was trying to show them that there has to be something greater, because, you can't forever sacrifice animals. You're always going to sin no matter what. You're always going to do some sort of sin. And so you can't constantly sacrifice animals. You'd have to be there sacrificing them forever to atone for the sins. And so I think God was trying to show the nation of Israel that there has to be something greater that has to come. And that's why it says in Isaiah 53, Isaiah prophesied about it, where he says that by the wounds, by his hands he was pierced, and by his wounds, because of the transgressions of many, we are healed. And that he's prophesying about Christ right there when he's saying that. And that's because Christ had to be that ultimate sacrifice. And that's what God was trying to show the nation of Israel, that you're going to always be there sacrificing an animal. And that's why Christ in 70 AD, when the second temple fell, Christ prophesied that temple would fall. He said that he made that prophecy. And also even the third temple, if you read the book of Daniel chapter 9, there's a prophecy in Daniel chapter 9 where I believe it's 27, don't quote me on it, you can have a look, but it says that the temple will come again, even the third temple, and that in the middle of the sacrifices will start, but in the middle of the week they will also stop again. And so the sacrifice is going to start again when the third temple is built, but they're also going to stop, because God's trying to show his people that it's not a building where you know when you go into a temple and you don't bring the temple doesn't house God. It's you bring the spirit to the building, and what I'm trying to say is that it doesn't matter what you do. There's no version of a sacrifice that's going to atone for your sins. It has to be something more powerful. And so That's why the blood of Christ is when it's washed over us spiritually. That's why that sacrifice is ultimate, and that's why it says that Christ said, "Out of the Father I came and into the world." And if you read Philippians chapter 2 verse 5, it says that prior to him, a lot of people think that Christ was the Son of God. He wasn't. He was the Son of God because he took the role of the Son. But prior to that, he was actually God in heaven, as the same as the two separate identities, but one. He says that he says, what's the verse? I think it's either Hebrews 1:8 or it's Philippians 2:5, where he says that though he was in the exact nature of God, he didn't consider his equality to God something to be used to his own advantage. You know, he was in the exact same nature of God, and this has been prophesied from the beginning. Isaiah prophesied it in Genesis chapter 18. Christ ate with Abraham. If you read it, he's actually there physically in form. But in John, in one of the verses of John, it says no one has seen the Father at any time. So it had to be Christ eating with Abraham. David talks about his king when he's talking about Christ, talking about the Messiah. And so there's a big, Christ has been throughout the entire Old Testament. Christ, if you actually read, he's actually moving throughout the Old Testament. The nation of Israel is being formed, and then Isaiah is prophesying that this guy will come, and for the transgressions of many, by his hands it will be pierced, and by his wounds we will be healed. And all the way up until the time that Christ comes and he's actually crucified, it's all a leading prophecy prophesied through the Old Testament, leading up to the New Testament, leading up to when Christ actually comes. And so what I'm saying is even in the prophecies in the book of Revelation, everything revolves around Christ, in my personal opinion, from reading. And it's not that it takes anything away from the Father, because when Christ came to earth and took the role as the Son, he only ever spoke about the Father. He didn't want to give any recognition to himself, so it's not taking anything away from the Father, because they're one. That's why he said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father, And so that's really what I wanted to say on the topic of, sacrificing of animals. God really just wanted to show his creation. He wanted to show the Jewish people and the Hebrew people that you will never be able to please me through doing what's right, because you're always going to sin. And that's not just for the Jews, it's for everyone. It has to be something greater. And then talking on the topic of demons, if you don't mind me switching it again, because I wanted to say something back then, but I couldn't. On the topic of demons, I think we give too much credit to the devil. What I mean by that is, we're not in a Job situation where the devil's particularly turned around to God and said, you see this guy Job, if I pick on him, I reckon he'll turn around and say to you that he'll curse you to your face. I don't think the devil's doing that with all of us. I know there's a scripture that says that he does go before God, and that he talks to God and says, look at these people, but I don't believe he's doing that with everyone. So what I mean by that is, I think we give too much credit to the devil. I think most of the things that we do, sins that we do, it comes from the desire of our heart, and it's because what Christ said, that he said that your eyes are the lamp of your body, and if the lamp of your body is not, if the light of your body is not healthy, your whole body is going to be unclean, right? So if the lamp of your body is not healthy, the whole entire body cannot light. And so what Christ was trying to say is that your pleasures, what you see through your eyes, is you're storing all that in your mind, and all those pleasures and desires are coming. And when we're doing things wrong, we're blaming the devil. We're turning around to the devil and we're saying, "Oh, the demons must have tempted me. This must have happened to me." It's not. It's your own desires and pleasures that store in your heart that are causing you to do this, and that's because you're pushing yourself further away from God. So it's not that I don't believe there's demons. There's clearly demons in this world, but in order for a demon to truly enter you, you must be really dabbling into something dark, like truly, seriously dark, and asking for that to enter you. And so when you see people doing things that are evil, I don't necessarily give credit to the demons. I just believe that that's their evil nature and evil heart that wanted to do those things. For a demon to truly enter you, you need to be dabbling into true darkness. Like you're talking about possession of a demon now entering your body and possessing you. And then that takes away, well, was it you that did that? No, it was the demon. So I don't give credit to these things, I'm not saying the devil's not out there tempting people. He's clearly doing that. But I think humans tempt themselves. Personally, I think humans most of the time do all these evil things that you see going around the world. I don't give the devil credit for that. I just say it's humans in their evil nature going after the desires of their heart. And so I wouldn't give too much credit to the devil personally. I do believe there is demons, but you can't see them. So what's the point of giving them credit? It's like an old Peter Pan thing. Like if you watch the old Peter Pan, where if you didn't believe in the fairy, she didn't exist, right? I mean, she died. Sorry, if you stop believing in her, you, at the end of the day, if the demons are not going to reveal themselves, don't give them credit. It's human nature. We're as humans, we desire what's wrong naturally. And that's because we're not in the Lord 24/7. You need to have the Spirit of the Lord living in you, and you need to be connected with God. It's almost like an avatar connection. When the avatar connects his hair to the animal, and he becomes one with the animal. That's how you have to be with God. And humanity, clearly, by the Book of Revelation, if you read it, how it's been prophesied from Christ in Matthew 24, nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Humanity is inevitably going to go to the darkest of dark places before the Lord returns. And so that's inevitable. But an individual person like us here today, we need the avatar connection every day to stay sane, to stay connected to God. And that's the only way truly to have a healthy body. And yeah, that's really what I wanted to say. Hopefully it made sense.
I definitely agree on the part. Of course, as we have discussed already, that a person, in order to let a demon take possession of them or anything like that sort. Oh no, I don't know what's wrong with Game of Thrones. I don't know why it's not working. I don't know why. Listen, Adam, let Game of Thrones know that I can hear him. Let him know. Adam.
Game, he could hear you. I guess you can't hear him.
So, Adam, you're going to tell him.
Can I go ahead? Adam, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I guess you can't. You can't hear Aaron.
You mind if I go?
No, wait.
Yeah, you could.
Tell him to wait. I just want to finish my thought, then he could go.
Wait 1 second. He's going to finish his thought, and then you could go right ahead, Game.
I will let him know. Okay, I mean, you will let him know. Whatever. Okay, so yes, a person needs to be in a very low moral character and very low morality and a hedonistic, pleasurable place in order to allow a demon to take possession of them. So if you are the type of person that has allowed demons to take possession of you, you can still reclaim your life. You could still win. You could still do, but you have to really connect with God. Otherwise, I mean, you're allowing yourself to get lost. There is still hope, but you really got to work extra hard because you have already made it so that you're in such a terrible position. Okay, Adam, let Game of Thrones know that he can go ahead.
Yeah, Game, you could go ahead. I just wanted to say, I think in the stories of Jesus, Mary was possessed by demons, and then that's why she drank so much, and she was an alcoholic, and so on and so forth. Correct me if I'm wrong, but go ahead, Game. You're up.
Oh my God, that was quite a sideways departure. I'm damn near 70. Next year I will hit the 7-decade mark. But as a Christian, who basically a lot of things have evolved with me to be more discerning and more understanding. First of all, we're all, I think, in this room, followers of the book. Okay, no matter if you're Mormon, Mormon. Excuse me. Whoa, that was weird. Muslim, Jewish, or Christian. And to me, most assuredly, Satan's biggest trick is to convince everyone that he didn't exist. All right? God gave us free will, number one. This is something that's very clear throughout history. To do good or to do bad. God being the author of concord and the devil being the deviser of confusion and strife. Here's the big takeaway. Satan doesn't come to you as a big, gnarly, red poking a guy with a tail. No, it's a seduction. It's always something either naughty but nice, telling you it'll be okay. You can get away with this. Nobody's going to know. Da, 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 da. That is the trick. This is how Satan works for me. And understanding that and understanding that Christ came as the fulfillment of prophecy, as the atonement of sin, and by grace and grace alone are we saved. And it's that simple. But this is where I call out a lot of brethren on the Catholic side of the aisle, that I call them the mafia Catholics, the ones who go out and sin and shoot and kill and rape and whatever, and then they go to confession and they say 15 Hail Marys, and boom, the slate's clean, they do it all over again. God knows the intention of your heart. Don't ever think he doesn't. It's something to me that we all walk slowly, and that's this. God, it's said throughout the Bible, we all work out our own salvation with fear and trembling. And fear doesn't mean shaking to me, it means respect. And once we get that and we have that connection with the Holy Spirit, it's all good. The choice is yours.
Adam, tell Game of Thrones that I thank him for his contribution to the conversation.
Game of Thrones, Aaron, thanks you for your contribution. He did get to hear what you were saying there, so he appreciates it.
Yes, I heard. Tell him I heard everything. I don't know why he can't hear me, but yeah. Okay, let's go to No Quarter.
Man, this is good stuff. I wish I wasn't like preoccupied and I could participate more and contribute more. And I hate missing these type of conversations. But I just wanted to jump in because I think I always like to approach things, and I think this is where God can work with us the best, is when we approach him as children, as not so knowledgeable, but seeking more, and I just wanted to, also add that I live by, we're in judgment. Let me just say this first. We're in judgment times right now. We're being judged. I believe that's exactly what's happening. In order to be sanctified and all of that, we have to go through, let's call it a sifting process, the separating the wheat from the chaff. That absolutely has to happen, which is what we feel is a struggle or times of trials and tribulations are exactly that. It's like a purification type of thing happening, the refiner's fire happening to every one of us. And it's going to happen to each one of us before we get to know Christ and accept him anyway. And that's the other.
Adam, you there? I'm sorry. No quarter.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry.
I meant No Quarter. Well, No Quarter cut out. When he comes back, he will be able to continue what he has to say. Let's go to Witness.
We lost you there, No Quarter. But yeah. Go ahead, Witness.
Hey, guys. Again, good space. I, too, have to step out. I was going to encourage you to do another one sometime along the same lines.
Yes.
Of discussion.
Absolutely.
It's definitely needed.
Listen. All right, I think we've reached the end. Unless, let me see, No Quarter, you still there?
Aaron, can you hear me?
Aaron,
yes,
can you hear Witness?
Yes, I can hear him.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that perhaps you do another space along the same lines.
Absolutely.
Maybe even put Judaism, Christianity, and Islam in the title and draw in some more folks from the Abrahamic religions. And anyway, great space, and bless you, brother. Thank you for being cordial and mature. I truly appreciate it. Sometimes these topics can get pretty charged, especially when one faction is accusing the other of being Satan worshiper. So anyway, one time I was called a, quote, damn Jew, a Muslim terrorist, and also a hillbilly in the same 48 hours. So anyway, that's crazy nonsense. Bless you.
That's hilarious. Personally, I'm an ultra-Orthodox Jew, and I've been called both a Nazi and...
All right, I'm back in the house. Can you hear me, Aaron?
No, Quarter, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. So I want you to finish that thought. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm not sure where it left off, but I'll start here because I think this is one of the most important things to understand is that we're in times of judgment, I believe. And, this purification this refiner's fire type of thing happening to where, and I know I'm jumping around here because I want to hurry up and let you go, but we're, in order for the second coming to happen, let's just say, because I know everybody doesn't believe in that. There has to be some sort of the wheat has to be separated from the chaff. We need to know who's real. God already knows, obviously, who's real and who's not. But we're all given an opportunity. We're in a time of judgment right now. And by our choices, it is going to determine, which direction we're going to go. So anyway, let me say I like to approach these things as a child, because I'm not a scholar. I love the Lord. I want to point out to Aaron, because what Witness said, or was what he was saying, is that to have a balance in here, because if you're coming from the perspective of a Christian, we know no other way. Our belief is that we get through heaven through Christ, and there's no other way. So, I mean, I don't know how we have that conversation without having that understanding that that's where we come from, and it does not deviate. So I just thought I'll leave it there. I can't wait for the next space and to really contribute to that one, but thanks for the space. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Absolutely. Yes, I'm very well aware. This is why I want to bridge the gap. The one thing that I want the Christians to understand about Judaism is that the rabbis of the time and Jesus did not have that far off of an agreement. They were actually in one thing. Above all else, they were in agreement that the golden rule has been forsaken completely, totally, and utterly. Jesus came down to say that the Pharisees are acting like hypocrites when they are not behaving in accordance to God's law, when they are not looking at their fellow Jewish brethren as they are supposed to. They hate each other, or as what was known as sinas chinam. It was hatred without a cause, just because. So, therefore, this needs to be taken completely in every conversation about Judaism and Christianity, that we need to love each other period. Point blank range, everything. We need to love each other. We cannot hate each other. We need to end these wars. All of this is just, it doesn't really matter. So this is what the rabbis of the time and Jesus have an agreement on, that the Jews did not behave appropriately or properly. So, okay, I'm gonna go to this last hand because we're wrapping up now. So make it fast. I'm gonna finish with a final thought. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I gotta go as well. But I was gonna say I'm gonna add you, and I really like this space. And I was gonna also say to your point is that you're right. The Jews and the Christians should stick together, definitely, because I think we're way more powerful together anyway than we would be separated, 100%. And if you look at other nations that stick together, we're actually quite divided. And if we stuck together more, there's a lot more we can accomplish. Just because the passages of the scripture prophesy a terrible ending, not for us, but it doesn't mean that we give up. We should stay strong and still strive to achieve greatness and do what's right, and stick together and uphold the rightful law of what is good under the law of God. And as long as we're in the world doing that, fighting against evil and sticking together, we can accomplish a lot. So definitely the Jews and the Christians should unite 100%. And thank you for this today.
Well, I'm willing to make an alliance with the Christians. We need to make an alliance with the Christians and everybody else that believes in God and fear Him. Those we really do need the alliance, because the hedonistic satanic forces are definitely on the move, and they are not sleeping. They are going to try to destroy us. They want nuclear war. They are anti-human. They are the anti-humanist Malthusian types. They need to be stopped at every turn. They cannot be allowed to win. So yes, we definitely do need an alliance. We need to stop these evil bastards immediately, and have to stop. It had to be done already yesterday. So yes, if you are keeping in the title keeping in the conversation of the title, if you find yourselves being talked to by demons, you find yourself being drawn to demonic forces, you see Satanism as being attractive or anything like that, your moral character has been thrown into question. You need to stop it immediately. You need to find help either by a priest or by a rabbi, or just ask God for forgiveness. Just cry and beg for God. Just
don't listen to Taylor Swift.
Yeah, do not listen to Taylor Swift. Yeah, definitely not. But yeah, cry your heart out. God is desperate for your tears. He is desperate for you to ask for forgiveness. He loves you. He wants you. He just does not want you to fall into the hands of either Satan or whatever evil force there is out there. He definitely wants you. So you are definitely loved. Do not give in. Do not surrender to the dark forces. Okay. For those who are interested in these kinds of conversations, we do this every second Sunday. So second Sunday from now, keep an eye out for a link. I'll probably post either Friday or at the end of Saturday.
I knew it. SS, you are a Nazi Jew.
Yep, I am. Yep. Adam, you have exposed me. Adam, you have exposed me. Okay, so every Sunday, every second Sunday we post, we have this kind of discussions. Last one was about if Jesus was a Pharisee. So if you guys want to listen to that, that is very interesting. For those who are in question or in doubt, was Jesus an actual Pharisee? Well, I bring out all the evidence that Jesus, not all, I bring out some of the evidence that Jesus was a Pharisee. There is much more to talk about. And we're going to be talking so many interesting things, so many things related to theology to understand the differences. Once we start to understand the differences, then we start to understand each other. And this is one of the parts that we need to make sure that the communication does not break down between us, because that's what they want. They want us divided, and we're not going to be divided. We're going to serve God. We are not going to allow them to divide us, because a house divided against itself cannot stand, and we really need to be in the graces of God, in the house of God. All right. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you in 2 Sundays. See you around. Peace out.
God bless everyone. See you.